Hey everybody, we back. We are going to do a open walk on panel. So as you can see, this article from Vox entitled "Gen Z's High-Speed Rail Meme Dream Explained." Okay, so this was a weird choice from Vox, which I don't understand, but that like this is like specifically a passion of Gen Z. It's like half the articles about this, and I don't understand, but whatever. Let's get to the heart of the matter. The heart of the matter is this map that you see right here. Um, this map shows a theoretical high-speed railway. It was created by someone actually back in 2013. This was drawn up by someone, but it's amazing. I get why people are happy about it. Let's see if I can scroll into this thing a bit more. Yeah, so as you can see here, it talks about this thing covers most of the United States, right? They apparently have forgotten about like was it Montana and which was this? I have no idea which state this is actually. Is this Idaho? I don't know. I got that. But it doesn't matter. Like everyone else forgot about them too. South Dakota, North Dakota, yeah, who cares? But it looks like they have some sort of extension here, maybe. Might be some sort of extension. You could see like gray lines here. But the most important thing is what's happening here, right? At the important parts of the country. So sorry. Yeah. So we've got all the major cities being hit on the East Coast on down, and the West Coast, all through the South. Yeah, this map is just beautiful to me. So I've done a lot of traveling. Um, I've done a bunch of traveling to different countries, and I have seen firsthand. I've seen firsthand how great other countries have in terms of railway, right? It happened in Europe and in Asia. It's beautiful. I mean, public transportation is beautiful. It's efficient. It's fast. And we have nothing compared to it. So this is specifically about high speed rail, not just rail. High speed rail, I believe the article says, is any rail that's over 160 miles per hour. Yeah, high speed rail refers to lines that typically run over 160 miles per hour. Yeah. Yeah, so that's what this is pointing out. If we had this system, like like there's a line in France that apparently goes over 200 miles per hour, right? With that speed, you can go from New York to Chicago in under 4 hours, and under our current rail system, it takes 20 hours. So that gives you a sense of scale here, the difference that we're talking about. So yeah, so and this one is travel time 30 to 20 miles per hour, but this is just like a mock-up, so who knows what the actual speed would be. But guys and gals, this is an amazing. This would be an amazing addition to the states. The the amount of money you would save in traveling for short distances across the country, right? The amount of money you would save, the amount of time that would be saved, the amount of carbon emissions that would be saved, all of that is a possibility. All of this is a possibility if we had high speed rail. China, hold on, where's China? Yeah, this article goes into it. Um, China, in particular, made massive investments into high-speed rail. This is after the 2008 global financial crisis. But China, in particular, made massive investments into high-speed rail, building over 15,000 miles of rail lines that service more than 1.7 billion passengers yearly, according to the World Bank. Yeah, it's amazing. This is what you can do if you have political muscle behind something, right? And I'm not a fan of the Chinese system. I'm not a fan of the CCP. I think I've made that very clear here on this channel. But I am a fan of actually getting shit done. And we don't do that here. So let me look into chat, see what you guys are saying. China, thank God the CIA hasn't effed this stream too. What? Okay, thank you for being here. Honing bear in politics. Just make flying cars commercial, exactly. Revolt rise the amount of CO2, yeah. Latex fuck, hey, what's up? I fucking love transit in Vienna. Oh, I bet it's amazing. Oh, that's amazing. Um, yeah, fuck, God, it's so good. Boeing is an abomination that is grossly incompetent and should be nationalized the next time they need a bailout. I agree. I agree. We won't rise. Let's nationalize Boeing. Hooray! Break it up. Fuck that shit. Break it up or nationalize it. Or whatever. Or both. Break up part of it, break up, and then nationalize the rest of it. Definitely. Yeah, Boeing is a mess. As long as planes have a leg in this debate, this doesn't look possible. Okay, so Pompous Productions. That's a good point, right? So why? First of all, why is our transportation system so bad in the first place, right? The only thing that we have that is this is extensive is the national highway system, and therein lies the problem. Like the U.S. designed its infrastructure around cars. Uh, it's not clear to me exactly why that happened. I imagine there was some campaign donations happening. I don't know. It just seems likely a thing, uh, but we've designed it in the most inefficient manner possible. So well, but we can change it. This is something that can be changed, right? We can actually design a better system for tomorrow. Not only with this high-speed rail, but with like local like light rail within cities. We can build more subways. We can invest in like fucking bike lanes. We can have trams. Not trams. Trolleys. Yeah, we could have trolleys. We could have all those things, and see how they would improve just moving around a city, right? In terms of like safety, right? Like first of all, you want to like a good idea would be just to give people more options, right? So like if you are drunk, if you are inebriated, right? You could if you had an efficient system, a lot of people would choose that. If you give people an efficient system, a public transportation system, people will choose that over using cars, right? If they can, they will. It saves them money. Why not? Um, so I'm going to jump back here into the comment section. I think national high-speed line would be a bad idea. A bad idea. Interesting. I think a push to have a similar idea but localized to a city like Houston would be super interesting. A national high would be a bad idea. I'm curious as to why you think that. Houstonian is a commuter city, so opening up cheap transportation would create more opportunity for low-skilled worker and incentivize people to move their shifting electoral politics. Why do you think it's a bad idea? It's what I don't understand. Could you explain that to me? But anyway, Latex Fox says the car company sabotaged the public transit system in the U.S. That's my understanding of it too. I don't know the exact details, so I don't want to like say anything that's untrue. But yeah, Houston is Dallas to San Antonio through Austin to Houston would enable 4 billion a year in new business. That would be amazing. Um, Quite frankly, transportation may be cheaper, but I will always choose an individual experience other than a group experience. Sure, whatever. There will definitely be people like that as well. But well, I can tell you right now, if I had an efficient system, right, that I could rely on, then definitely. I don't even want a car. I don't want to own a car. I don't want to. I want the fees associated with it. I would love to just save the money and just use that system. And those places in Europe, when I went to like, for instance, Paris, right, or England, or when I went to Japan, shit, when I went to Hong Kong, like all those systems were so efficient, and I could see myself if I was living in those cities, like never having a car. Why? Why would I need one? It gets me to everywhere I need to go, right? And anywhere else that I need to go, there's Uber, there's taxis, there's whatever to fill in those gaps. But beyond that, why would I need any of that? No, I'd much rather use that. Use an efficient system like that. Hey, Captain Nate Jones. All right, I'm gonna hop into the again exclamation point open in chat. And hey, to Rajimoto. We'd love to have you. Exclamation open in chat lets you know this is a walk-on panel. We're honest members like you. Yes, you may participate. Join the Discord server. Go into the robot waiting room. Said you can let in. So yeah, let me jump in here. Oh, holy shit! There's a lot of people here already. I didn't think that would be the case. All right, well, I didn't notice. So I'm in. So if people want to jump in, that's great. Yeah, if people want to jump into chat, then we'll open this up to everyone else. There. So I'm guessing people will filter in soon. Rajimosa, it's too much money, and I think eminent domain would be involved, and the map looked like it was cutting through swampland, so there's ecological concerns. Well, again, this is just what some random person drew up, so it doesn't have to look like this, right? I'm not saying we have to have exactly this plan. So in terms of the swamp thing, then it's like whatever. Hey, Eli.
Hey, what's up, buddy?
Hey. Does the rest of the waiting room know that they can come in?
I'll go tell them.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Oh, sorry. It would take a lot.
Hey, Prime, my dude, what's up?
Hey. Glad to have you all here. We're talking infrastructure.
Yeah.
Yes, I love infrastructure.
Yeah. Yeah. So if you could,
you want me to drag all the people in here? Or?
Did you read that the guide that
I did.
You did?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So then follow that guide. Good.
Okay, I'll be right back.
Yep. All right. Okay. So
Oh, not this fucking meme image.
Oh, have you seen it before?
Oh, I've seen this so many times. Like for the infrastructure, like fucking brain dead people. Like this became a meme for a while.
Yeah. Revolt Rise, you got your camera?
Yeah, I'll be there 1 second.
Okay. All right. Well, I'll wait for him. Got to get more cameras on screen.
The US ain't gonna have high speed rail under the fucking dipshits that are running the systems now.
Yeah. Well, we'll get to it in a second. We're getting some people in. And guys, thank you for participating. Again, if you guys want to jump in, there's the server. Do that.
Prime.
Hey. Oh man, we're getting a lot of new people. Fantastic.
Good to see you again.
Hey, nice to have you. Okay. Don't worry, I'll turn on my camera in a second.
No, yeah. Mr. Badhoss in chat is 100% correct. Realistically, the US won't do it, but it is a good idea that we should be trying to.
God damn right it is.
True.
But I mean, one, like we have, the older a country is, the more infrastructure builds up over time, right? And the earlier industrialized, the more of that old infrastructure it's got built up, right?
Okay.
Because the United States was one of the first countries to industrialize, especially on the East Coast, you have just these layers of really old infrastructure that everything sits on top of, right? And it becomes really expensive to maintain it all. And so a lot of the cost for infrastructure right now is simply maintenance of our existing stuff, let alone expanding what we have now. And the problem is infrastructure is such a boring fucking part of governance, right? Like unless you're building a new bridge, you don't get to cut fancy red ribbons or tout about it nearly as much, right? Like, I paid for maintaining this bridge, right? No one fucking cares. And so because of a lot of that, and like it's just like not partisan, it's not a hot issue, there's just not much to do there aside from make it work. It just gets criminally underfunded.
Right. Which is why our infrastructure is in such shit shape. And like most of the infrastructure in this country still that we rely on, at least in like key corridors, right? It was built during the last New Deal. So it's literally old.
It is genuinely true. You can tell like how powerful a country is or how powerful it has the potential to become by how much money it is putting into infrastructure oftentimes.
Yep.
Like It is especially a good example for showing a country's ability to long-term plan, right? If a country is willing to put a lot of money into infrastructure, it's proof that country can plan for a long, long time in the future. Japan, great at planning on the long term. Shinkansen is an excellent example of this. A multi-decades long project of building a powerful rail infrastructure that services a country that is intensely mountainous with pockets of highly dense urbanized areas. Great example. Netherlands,
yeah, and they run on time. The trains,
yeah.
Don't you dare try to make one late in Japan.
yeah. Germany too. It's like even France. When I was there, I never had a train run late for me when in the brief stint I was in France.
That's actually a miracle, I think. But
versus my home Los Angeles, right? I'll daughter off to the metro, and there'll be buses that most of the time, surprisingly, they're actually on time, but there will be times where it's 15 to 45, and there will be times it just doesn't come, and you just have to get the next one.
Also, like the more advanced your civilization or like country or nation state typically gets, the more infrastructure you need, right? Like, as if you're running a primary resource economy or something like that, you really don't need infrastructure for the majority of people you have in your country. All you need is the road.
You do.
The
it's
mine.
Just that those people are getting ignored.
Yeah, they're getting ignored because your only export and like what's basically make your country money would basically be your primary resource. So you basically build a road from your mines to your port, and that's the only road you really need to make money, right? Where as soon as your civilization, nation state, whatever becomes more developed, right? You
there's
now
some
have to start
issues
getting
with your
roads,
logic
people.
here.
Okay, let me finish quick. So now when your nation state starts getting developed, right, you start to have to build roads, people to be able to get to factories and things like this, where
buddy? Hello?
Is he
Ginger?
dead?
Hello? There.
Hello?
Could you
Did I robot?
No, you just kind of dropped out of the lag spike. Go try it again. Like the last thing you said, you got it.
So yeah. Hold on a second. I'm roboting.
No, you're fine. You're not roboting. You just.
Oh, okay. Okay. It just looks like on my screen I am. So if it's all right on your end, just to finish off, like, so like once you start to develop past like a primary resource economy, and you go into like these secondary resources and stuff like that, and you start to build factories. Now you have to start to provide roads for your citizens to get to these factories and things like this, right?
I mean, so one, no, there's a lot of problems here, right? Is one, regardless of your, whether you are an extraction-based economy or an industrial-based economy or a service sector-based economy, there are certain key pieces of infrastructure that you want to have as developed as possible, irregardless. Sanitation, electrical grids, things like that, right? For the example of extractive economies, right? You do need to develop everything, right? For example, when the Netherlands was in charge of the area we now know as Indonesia, right? They needed to develop the infrastructure there if they wanted to like actually develop the human capital of that area, right? They just simply didn't because they didn't want to, right? Like we're mistaking a necessity for an ideology, right? They just like oftentimes with extractive economies, you can decide simply to not develop that resource.
Hold on 1 second. Salty Sam, your camera is not coming on. I'm not sure if you realize that. If you could maybe try turn it off and turn it back on, because I'm getting tired of looking at the spinning thing.
Yeah, give me 1 moment.
Yeah.
Reloading. Or if your cam is being used somewhere else on your computer, like your cam can only really output to one.
Yeah, that might be it.
Yeah.
If you have OBS open, for example, and it's set to use your webcam, it'll mess up when you move it on Discord.
I'm getting another webcam just for that issue.
You can also get like
dude, I have a GoPro, but I actually have to have like some external thing to hook up to it so I can use my GoPro.
You can also use a virtual camera program to be able to use the same image twice. I'm not sure if you're aware of that.
What?
Yeah.
I didn't know that either.
Oh yeah. There's one called ManyVids you could use, so give that a try.
My man needs
No,
to
minivids.
develop
No,
his-
minivids. Never mind, not that one.
Yeah,
No,
yeah. I was like, be careful when you Google that term, though.
No,
if
not
you're
that
under
one.
18.
It's another one. Fuck. I'll search for it. It's not that
How
one.
many X's are in this
no,
URL?
Not that one. Not that one.
Just manyvids.com /
Go ahead, Dr. K.
Yeah. So, my man needs to develop his camera infrastructure. No, I fucking hate the House Saud, right? They run an entirely extractive economy, right? Yet they are developing other infrastructure, as stupid as it is within their nation, because they realize that developing infrastructure leads to potential economic gains down the road. And trust me, the Saudi Arabian infrastructure that's being developed is very stupid for the most part.
Saudi Arabia owns the road outside my house. It's a toll road, and they collect the tolls. Just so you know.
That's crazy.
It's Captain Ajo. It's many cams, many cam. Look for that. Okay, sorry.
Or during American industrialization, right? You would have coal towns and steel towns, right? That were highly based on an extractive model, right? And the ones that are now powerful are the ones that develop not just the extractive infrastructure, but the infrastructure surrounding that develop the human capital within their area, right? Yeah. You had imagine a coal town in West Virginia and a coal town in Minnesota, right? One builds simply the road to the mine to the steel mill, whereas the other develops, not only the roads there, but schools and hospitals and all the other good stuff. You see over time that place is going to grow more exponentially and actually develop into an area, that turns into a city that can move to an industrial economy and then maybe even a retail economy, though, you get what I'm saying.
Sure.
Revolt Rise, are you in Arabia right now?
Nope, Texas.
Yeehaw.
Whoa. So what's the story there if it's not too boring?
I mean, literally, they just bought up a ton of resources from Texas. I think Saudi Arabia. I don't think there's a oil refinery in Texas that isn't owned by Saudi Arabia right now. I'm pretty sure they own them all.
Is it directly owned by Aramco?
Yeah, I mean, it's like, it's like Saudi Aramco, whatever, something. But regardless, they also own the toll road that runs from Dallas or just outside of Dallas all the way to San Antonio and a little bit further south from there, and a few other toll roads around here, and part of our airport, I think, too. So
that's another thing is do not let. And this is to any of you who ever get into a position where you are like a head of a government or whatever,
running a country.
Yeah, I know, right? Happens to all of us at some point. Never ever let private companies or foreign governments be the one who develop your infrastructure, because that is never going to end well to you, right?
We can talk about a cautionary tale about that in Texas too. Like we have this very, 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 the holy grail of open markets, right? In fact, it was copied from Enron. If you guys remember Enron, they were, it's obvious why we had the result that we had here during the snowstorm. But so there's a 24-hour energy market where they can buyers of energy can basically buy the natural gas that they're going to use right when it's in the pipeline coming out to them. They don't have to buy it ahead of time. They don't have to waste any money on stocking up. Of course, what happens is then you get a bad snowstorm and all of a sudden the price of natural gas goes from 9 cents per whatever to $9 per whatever. And the system freaks out, shuts everything down, and then all of your machinery gets covered in ice because it doesn't actually exist inside a building because the building costs too much to cool in the summer. So they just put a roof over it and like a shitty tin roof over these giant generator things, and they got covered in ice. So a bunch of people died. It's a real good system. So that's what happens when you let private industry, the neoliberal way of privatizing all these things that should be state-run infrastructure. So
even when you have state-run infrastructure, there's this highway in my province, and basically what ended up happening, it was run by the state and everything like that. But once I forget if it was the provincial government or our national government, but they eventually were wanted to lower the deficit, so they ended up selling a bunch of these state things, and they ended up selling this state-owned highway to a businessman in China, and now this businessman in China owns this highway that everyone uses.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, when it comes to infrastructure, more so than any other field of governance, you want this shit run by people who have like the national interest, as their forefront of what's on their mind, rather than profitability or a different national interest or some self-serving end, right? Like infrastructure that is not run on the national interest is always going to be fucking. It's not going to end well. Here's a cool one straight back from LA, because I know LA infrastructure like the back of my hand. So there's San Francisco, right, which has it's San Francisco has BART, right, which is owned by the city of San Francisco, best that I know, right? And BART has been operating about as long as the Los Angeles metro systems have been, right? But because the LA red cars were owned privately, they were able to be sold off and the whole thing torn up and turned into a freeway. So we literally saw not only just a systematic disinvestment, but like a literal destruction of public infrastructure, or not public, of like useful, helpful infrastructure being, just completely flipped on its head for something on the whole far less efficient. And this is just like a classic story of American infrastructure, is a systematic disinterest and privatization and crapatization of it.
One other thing that's pretty
Bart's pretty
interesting with
no, BART is cool.
Oh, okay.
I was talking about the red lines which exist concurrently.
Yeah, one other thing that a lot of people, especially like mainly you see this with North Americans, the problem with our infrastructure is we could actually be gaining like a lot by using roundabouts, because they actually increase the efficiency of travel like a lot more than most people realize. And I think the only reason we haven't implemented them right now is just because no one in America knows how to like actually use roundabouts, because there's so few of them. And I'm incredibly surprised that there hasn't been a move anytime recently towards that, because from everything I've seen, it's like incredibly it's way more efficient to use roundabouts than like normal just stoplights.
I thought they were getting popular in the Northeast. Am I wrong about that?
There are some. I don't know if they're adding more of them, but there's definitely some. Like I'm from Rhode Island, and like there's a bunch of them.
Yeah, because I'm from Canada, like right above that region. We have a fuck ton here. Like they're pretty common here, and I'm pretty sure I've seen a few when I went down for hockey tournaments in America too.
Where at in Canada?
I live in Ontario.
They're popular in DC, in Charleston, in Spartanburg, in Charlotte. I mean, roundabouts are not a unique concept. Where are you from, Salty Sam?
Well, I'm from Canada, Toronto. It's just a lot of the times, like you'll find them on occasion, and they're probably more concentrated in certain places in America. But like if you compare like the number of roundabouts in anywhere in North America, and you compare it to like the UK and a lot of other European countries, you'll see that it's like all these European countries have a lot more of them, and there are a lot of there's a lot of like efficiency to be gained by implementing a lot more.
Efficiency such as miles per gallon. What are we talking? Time?
So essentially, it's the whole idea of how many cars you can get flowing through a certain intersection without kind of slowing the traffic down a lot. So I'm learning to be a civil engineer, and just last term I had a course on transportation, and it specifically focused a lot on roads. And what you see is you'll once you reach a certain amount of cars, obviously the speed that they can go at decreases a lot, because they're obviously like kind of like running into each other, not literally, but slowing down traffic. That's why you have traffic jams and all that. It's because of the fact that there's such like a dense amount of cars. But that could be improved a lot by using different like kind of essentially shapes. I don't know how to explain it, but different paths for the road to follow.
Well, another way is just another easy way to deal with car congestion is to just simply get cars off the road. Like if you have less people driving, you can simply, your roads are better overall, which is why like investing in things like public transit, right, is good for the car driver as well, because it means that he has less assholes he has to deal with.
The problem with that is just how American cities are set up in the suburbs, right? Like,
also how bad our infrastructure
it
around public transport is.
Finish your point, Ninja.
Oh, I was just want to see what's like, that's basically my point, right? Is that the suburbs in America and stuff like that change the culture for like from Europe and stuff like that, where public transit's super useful and super efficient, right? It just doesn't really work in America. There's a long distance between the suburbs and like the main city core.
Sort of. If you actually look at dense urban areas in the United States, which there are plenty of, right? And as the population of America increases, right, we can't just keep building suburbs, right? We need to begin upscaling the existing communities that we have so that you can see this sort of thing. But even in the urban areas of America where these things would be useful, they are often underutilized, right?
Absolutely.
So like I take America is not designed intelligently. I would agree, right? It's not designed with I don't know. Suburbs are not a good method of distributing human beings. It's a very inefficient method.
I don't think people in the suburbs want easy access to the cities, and vice versa. Typically,
I think that's untrue because that's why we build highways, right? That's why we build highways to the city.
Suburbs are cheaper.
I don't think
people will commute.
I don't think anybody living. I don't think anybody living in the suburbs is like, hey, you know what would be awesome if I could, spend an extra hour in my car on the way to work today. Like,
well, exactly.
Everybody wants efficiency.
Mm-hmm.
The point is that we need to be getting away from the suburb model of distribution, right? We need to be taking steps that incentivize living in either urban areas or rural areas, and not in this sort of between area that sort of falls in a rather inefficient category.
So we're gonna go to we'll go to Samantha and then Sam the human, but not Salty Sam. So we'll go to her. And
you two Sams need to change your fucking names, by the way. This is not okay.
But before that, hey, there are two people here who in the waiting room who really want to participate. I want to make sure if there's anyone here who's not going to participate on this particular topic, let me know. Like you guys can come back later, but like any people who are gonna not. Thank you. Who are going to participate. Great, thank you. So we'll just grab these guys. And hey, Connor, thanks for being here. And Rajimoto, can you hear me? Right.
Yeah, what up, man? How you doing?
Yeah, thanks for stopping by. We got a bit of a line, but we'll get to you because I definitely want to hear what you have to say. Since you were disagree with me in chat, and I love when people disagree with me, so that's a lot of fun. But we'll get to you in a second, okay? All right. Let's go to Samantha.
I like two things. So one because if you're new to knowing me, I live most of the time outside of COVID times, half the time in Europe, half the time here, and specifically in France. So in France, mainly in the village, there's like a little type of like bus type of thing that takes us over to the train station. And then from there, we can go wherever the fuck we want via metro, be it the above ground train or the underground train. Out here in the Bay Area, same type of thing. If you live in the suburbs, they basically have like these inclusive passes for BART where in your BART pass, it's a little bit more, but it gives you like a bus pass / BART pass with a transfer. So like you pay a little bit more, you take the bus over to the BART station, and then you can hop on BART. And, these things should be implemented more into this, like into the suburbs. So like even out in like the crazy middle of nowhere fucking villages in the middle of fucking provincial France, right? There's high-speed trains that will get you to Lyon, that will get to you to Marseille, that will get you to Paris, or link in between those, and many other cities in between, right? On high-speed rails. And then there's other rails if you're going everywhere. But like you can get to anything by like walking 20 minutes from your house to the nearest bus stop. I mean, if you live in some remote villages, you're gonna have a walk, like, but you're living in the middle of fucking nowhere, that's on you. But you will always have access to public transportation via like a 20 or 30-minute walk to a busting, to a metro of some sort. And we don't have that here in America, especially in rural towns, little tiny rural cities with no connection. You might need to get a taxi, an Uber or something to the nearest town that has like a Greyhound station or something like that. But we really don't have that here, and we fucked up on planning like big time.
Okay, so we'll go to Sam the Human.
Yeah, so I just want to agree with that because I live in the Boston metro area normally outside COVID times. And again, you can get basically anywhere inside the city. And that's also kind of something that brought me to reading a lot of the work of like Walkable Cities and stuff. And that's something that I always want to push for when we talk about infrastructure. I think that we should stop designing cities for cars and designing them for people. Designing them for people to get around instead of worrying about the efficiency. Make it so that people can get around without a car. If people can get around without a car, you're going to reduce the number of cars on the road, which is going to reduce traffic, which is going to make people want to get out and do things. It booms the economy. It seems like walkable cities are like the way to go. Lowers the amount of carbon emission from a city just by reducing the number of cars, increasing the number of trees, having more people have bike roads and stuff like that. Again, improving public
makes healthy population, increases
Healthier
retail
population?
spending. Yeah,
Yep.
like if you have a walkable street, increases retail spending.
Don't worry, Connor. We're gonna get right. You'll be next in line. So it's gonna be Sam, Connor,
Sorry,
Rajimoto, Dan, and Dr. K. All right.
Yeah, and there have been studies that show that walkable cities increase happiness. Just so like mental health is just better in walkable cities. It seems like being able to have a community around you that you can walk in and see people and smile and wave. People want that. So we should stop worrying about like making highways or stuff. Like we're worried about like building things for people to walk through and live life.
I 100% agree with you. It's beautiful. Yes, it's amazing. I love it. Paris is so walkable. Like it just changes your dynamic, how you relate to the city. I mean, you can just feel like you can walk to different places, interact with people, not like just getting in your car, right? Going somewhere else, parking, doing your thing, and then leaving, right? You definitely get to interact with individuals. I agree 100%.
Having a car in Paris is actually worse than walking anywhere in Paris. I just want to point that out. It's fucking horrible.
It's amazing. Connor, please.
All right. To like speak on the walkable cities part, like if you think that you can't do it in America, like you only have to actually look at like Europe because they didn't, it didn't used to be like walkable cities, right? A lot of the times it was like the primary mode of transport was cars, but they switched over and they switched like the way the infrastructure was, and they switched it towards like cycling, walking, I think trams in some cities, but there's plenty of other ways. Also to speak like on America specifically, it is literally like a car-centric society, right? Like you guys literally built your fucking highways like right through cities. Like you didn't even go around, you literally tore up neighborhoods and went right through. So
yeah, fuck Robert Moses.
Black neighborhoods, they tore up black neighborhoods.
Yeah, sure. And like it basically like did a whole bunch of shit because people would listen to like the white people, and so basically it just contributed a lot to like displacing a lot of minority communities, specifically black folks, and just fucked a whole bunch of stuff up. And one more thing, if you're talking about infrastructure, you have to talk about like local and state governments, because the federal government only does so much when it comes to like developing infrastructure. A lot of it is like cursory Google was like it's only around like 40% is actually from the federal government. So a lot of the initiatives are from like local and state, and this is where you need to focus your attention if you want to get like these kind of initiatives in, because if you just talk about like the federal government, and obviously they do play a part in it, you're never going to get anywhere, because like they're not the ones who drive the kind of change that you actually need to see in cities.
So let's go Rajimoto, Dan, Dr. K, strings.
Word, yeah. So I like all those ideas. I'm just kind of coming at it from a place in America that has tried to implement some of these. And part of the problem that I've noticed with the way that we do it is we have a lot of bike paths and all of this. We're very bike friendly. We have rentable bikes on the side of the street, et cetera, et cetera. And one of the ways that we kind of messed up, we bungled it, is we were too heavy handed on the bike leaves in the main arteries to the city. And then that caused mad congestion within the city limits, which in turn hurt local businesses. And this kind of applies with my beef with the nationalized high-speed rail, because I don't think that that's a very feasible plan. However, I do think that that would take away resources from doing things like these walkable cities, like forget it's in Paris. It's near the.
I mean, Paris is tourism centered,
like,
right?
Oh, sorry.
It's designed.
Could you repeat what you said, Rajimoto? You had a lag spike. We missed it. So you repeat your last sentence again, please.
Oh yeah, I was just talking about like there's a part of Paris called the Grand Arch de la Défense, and like the area around there has no cars, and it's designed in such a way that like you could walk to the supermarket, you could walk to recreation, etc., etc.
Okay.
I think that's a good idea. I think we should implement that here in America, but I don't think the priority should be on the high-speed trail.
Well, I think we have enough resources to do all. Don't, Dr. K, you don't have to raise your hand. I know, I know you want to go.
But I want to respond to this particularly because he's misunderstanding how Paris works as compared to like a normal city.
Fine.
Paris is not normal.
Fine.
Because Paris is
I understand that. I lived in Paris. I'm just saying
Yeah,
that particular area in Paris, I think it would be tight to implement that style.
Yes, and we can do both. And the issue is that like with the arterial thing, right? Is that when you're talking about something like that, right? It's because one, there needs to be sort of a coinciding cultural shift to incentivize this sort of behavior, as well as simply building the infrastructure necessary for that sort of thing. And as well, when it comes to bike lanes in particular, oftentimes because we are so car centric and we put so little into the development of bike lanes, right? We end up essentially shoehorning them against cars, in which like bikers, really don't have the disadvantage there, because we're talking like tons versus like 300 pounds of vehicle, right?
Right, but we're always going to have to transfer goods with a high volume vehicle.
Certainly, but bikers and these high volume trucks should not be in the same space, right?
Like the number
we shouldn't
one,
be putting them on the same road against each other in close proximity the way we do.
Because one of the number one reasons why people don't uptake biking is because there isn't like enclosed safe areas. So if you have an enclosed safe area, people will naturally like go towards it, because it's especially for low length trips, because it's like if they know they can ride and it's safe, then they'll do it. If they don't, if you have a fucking bike lane against like the side of the road, and then some fucking dude with a truck just like turns and hits them. And
exactly. And the way that in my time we tried to mitigate that is not only do we have one of the most expansive bike path systems in America, but we also had super wide bike lanes with like a lot of guardrails. And what that did was it was very costly to put up. And then it also limited the lane size of the roads.
Well, exactly. Is it coinciding with the cultural shift in like the usage of bike, right? Like if everyone's still majority using cars, even if the infrastructure is there, that's not really, that helpful at that point. And then B, like, are we talking about, because what happens in LA at least, right, is the bike lanes will go up, but then people will park their cars there. People will, shove shit onto the bike lanes to the point where you cannot use them, right? They're fundamentally not usable for the bikes, forcing them to engage with trucks, making it more dangerous and getting people killed.
So I want to engage with Rajimoto on the high speed rail comment, but I want to make sure everyone else can jump in first. So I will circle back to you, Raji, if you have a moment to wait. Okay, let's go to Dan.
Yeah, I see a lot of mention. I hear talk about walkable cities like all the time. So whenever we talk about American infrastructure, I think it's really important to separate like the eastern seaboard from the western, because the way you handle infrastructure on both sides is totally different. So for instance, on the West Coast, walkable cities just don't work. Like they wouldn't work the way things are set up now because of suburbs. So the real issue with like in order to make a walkable city work, you have to address mixed zoning. So that is the idea where you have businesses, residential areas, industrial, like all together. Otherwise, if you have a suburb and you have an industrial area, walkable cities just like you can't walk to work that way. Mixed zoning is the solution. Walkable cities, walkable cities is something that you have to handle retroactively, and this
San
gets ignored all the
Francisco's
time.
totally walkable.
No,
Yeah, but
again,
Seattle's also.
okay. Again,
San
so whenever I
Francisco
say,
and Seattle are outliers, I would say.
yeah,
Okay,
absolutely.
Oakland.
They're some of the oldest. They're some of the oldest city. Like typically, the oldest cities are going to be more walkable because of the way that they were built up. Like typically, businesses, residential area, like it's already mixed zoning in most old cities. The way we've built new cities in the U.S. is you have suburbs. You have like everything is zoned out. Like you have to drive to the grocery store. Even if the city's walkable, you still have to drive to the grocery store. Like otherwise, you're going to be walking 3 miles, and nobody wants to do that.
It's especially bad in the mountain cities, the desert cities, and SoCal, right? Phoenix is atrocious when it comes to this. LA is really bad. Anaheim is bad. Long Beach is bad. I always get Diego and Francisco mixed up, but the one that's further south, Diego, I think it is. That one's real bad. Like Boise, Idaho, like it. The northwestern Cascadian cities are surprisingly kind of insulated from that problem to some extent.
Let's go to strings.
Hey, so this question's for you, Connor. You mentioned our interstate system. That's interesting, man. I know that eminent domain happened, and especially in like the cities, a lot of people, who don't look like me, they kind of get screwed over sometimes, and that is a fact. But our interstate system, just a fact drop, really. You said you're from Canada, yeah?
What? Me? No, I'm from New Zealand, so.
New Zealand. Okay, cool. So just so everybody understands, like our interstate system, like with an I, I could be wrong, but I think it was Eisenhower in '58 who built it. And our interstate system is built for one purpose. It's built for warfare. It's built to take a missile, tank, infantryman from.
Sorry, I should stop you here quickly. My problem isn't with the interstate system itself. My problem is the fact that you put like these things through cities, right? Like that's the problem. It's not that you're having like the big connections everywhere. That's perfect, actually. That's really good. But the problem is like when you get into like I can't remember a specific one. Like let's just say hypothetically the center of like Detroit or something, right? And they'll just bulldoze a fucking highway. Right
that was New York you're talking about.
Milwaukee's a good example of this too.
Yeah. I can't give you a specific example off the top of my head because I don't study American. I know the generic stuff on it. But yeah, so if you my problem is that you build those like and put a highway right through and that splits up neighborhoods. The problem isn't necessarily that like you have connections between the cities. That's fine. It's just like through it.
Yeah, fuck Robert Moses again.
It's just interesting, man. Like I'll have to learn some history, as painful as it may be to realize your own history. Like you brought up our interstates, and to think that system, like everybody knows about cities and eminent domain. I mean, that's not far flung, but interesting to do some research on the federal impacts of eminent domain and how it may, cross lines. It's cool. Thank you.
So just quickly, I want to thank Riverboat Jack for being so kind as to rate us with 36 people. Thank you so much. And people from Riverboat as a community. Hi, my name is Prime. We do these open panels. You're probably familiar. We have Jack on oftentimes. Right now we're talking about the crumbling U.S. infrastructure and like ways that we can improve it. It's a really interesting talk. It's something I'm sort of passionate about, actually. And we got a lot of people here who are excited to jump in on this conversation. We're full right now, but oftentimes we do allow other people on. Exclamation open in chat lets you know how to jump on, but we're not so full as right this moment. But in any case, thank you all for being here, being so kind, and thank you Riverboat Jack for resubbing for 4 months. It's really kind of you, everyone. If you're enjoying this type of conversation, this topic, then do me a favor, hit that follow button, hit that notification bell so you know when I'm going live. Thank you all for being here. It's very kind of you, Riverboat Jack. Okay, let's move on. Let's go to Sam the Human, and then we'll go back to Dan. Did you have your hand up, Captain? Okay, sure.
I just want to mention a couple things. So somebody said the bike cities increased congestion. I still haven't, like every study that has looked at bike lanes has found that it actually either has had no effect on congestion or a decrease in congestion in these city areas. This has been looked at almost every city in the United States that has had implemented a bike lane system. So I don't really know if there's any like study or something you can point to showcase that there's actually an increase in congestion, or if it's just anecdotal.
So can I just respond to that real quick?
Please.
Yeah, so it is anecdotal, but I mean, I'm just going to put it in more context. I live in a city called Boulder, Colorado, and we already had bike lanes. The problem isn't there. It was that we implemented bike wrong areas. So we implemented them in high congestion areas. We implemented the bike lanes in a high congestion area. So like the main arteries to our cities, we put too big of bike lanes into.
Are you talking about like entries and exits, right? Like the way to get in and out of the city. Okay.
Yeah, the main arteries, like the main business streets that go in and out of the main cities. It's a weird city though, so I don't know if it's.
Yeah, I'd say talk to your city council. That's probably not a systematic wide. That's just a Boulder, Colorado.
I know. I was
problem.
using it as an example of when we go too heavy-handed on our infrastructure without knowing the benefits of it. It's kind of
we are too heavy-handed right now. In fact, you are 100% right. The problem is we're too heavy-handed in the favor of car-based infrastructure. That is the exact problem that the vast majority of America is in.
Not to check what he's saying, but like the main arteries, like cars aren't necessarily the best idea for these systems. Obviously, in some ways, like if you're traveling along the highway, whatever, you got to have a car. But if you're looking just like to go, say, from inside the like city center or whatever to the outskirts, like these are things that can be dealt with like buses or trains, right?
Yeah.
Like these aren't necessarily car oriented things, which maybe whereas like the bike lanes aren't necessarily the correct placement there, right? Like when you think about these things, it's not like you don't just shove one thing in everywhere and think that's going to work, because it's not, right? Like the mono.
I agree.
Yeah.
I think we need more like trains and stuff, and especially like in areas like Houston where it's a commuter city where like you can't really work there unless you have a car. Like to me, that's where we should be focused on.
Why not both?
Yeah, like both would
And
be
then-
good. Like, more commuting options is better than like less commuting options. Let's just think about that.
Let's go.
I just have a question.
Wait, I still had one more thing.
Okay, go,
Sorry.
please.
The other thing is that I just want strings. Another thing you might want to look into is when we update these interstate highways and stuff, a lot of the times that has a negative effect on communities that are mainly people of color. So again, I brought up Milwaukee. Look up the Zoo interchange and the fact that the Zoo interchange decreased the ability of primarily black communities to have access to things because the Zoo interchange went straight through their community. So that's something you could look up.
Yeah, it's a big problems when it comes to I see you, Dr. K. With public transportation, like how that can be used against, as Dr. K has said, fuck Robert Moses. He can go to hell. Burn in hell, please.
Oh yeah, can I get some fuck Moses in chat? Thank you.
That would be nice. You can literally use like infrastructure can be racist. Yes, you can actually do that. He proved it.
He was very good at that, in fact.
Yeah. Before we get into it, and we'll go to Dan, Captain A. Jones, and Dr. K. I want to mix up with Rajimoto a little bit. I sound really old when I say that. Sorry. But Rajimoto, you were saying that you feel that investing in these rails is too expensive and too much to maintain, right? I would submit that, first of all, the U.S. Always puts in a lot of money into playing things that don't help the people. I think this would be a worthwhile investment. I don't see how it couldn't be a worthwhile investment, especially in terms of business, in terms of ease of travel, in terms of energy efficiency, all these things. Like, I don't understand how this would not be better in the long run. In the short term, it's going to be extremely expensive, but in the long term, what do you think?
Well, I mean, for me, it's like the idea is you would have to have a lot of land across the nation to do that, right?
We have.
And I don't think, right, so like I think that you're going to have to buy that back from the people who own it currently.
Sure.
We can.
But also you're going to have to pay for things like the mineral rights on the lands and other places that have also been gobbled up. So like there's just a lot of political capital that would have to be spent on this motion, and it would have to be throughout the states. So you would have to approach it from the federal government.
Yeah.
And that's just going to gonna cause a lot of problems for conservatives when you're like, yo, the federal government is sweeping into your land.
Yeah, who gives a fuck about conservatives? They can
If you
get
don't
fucked.
have the majority to just say fuck them.
No,
So fuck them. We're developing
I would
interstate
agree with you,
commerce.
though.
Yeah,
I would agree with you. That shit would be dope, and I would be all about it. But like, as it stands, I feel
Then be
like
all about it.
So hold on. So Captain, sorry, not Captain. Excuse me. Rajimoto. Okay. So one, if you're talking about like right this second, we probably don't have political capital to do this, right? I'm talking about, so just putting it out there, we're talking about the benefits that we could get if this plan were enacted under a theoretical savior of a president. I don't know, maybe let's call him Bernie Sanders. If we had a great president like that, and of course the Congress and all that, right? But I mean, your point is taken in terms of like the amount of effort it would like political effort it would take to actually make this happen. I don't give a shit about like fucking conservatives and like making plans around them, right? Like we will take this to the marketplace of ideas and we'll win, right? People, this is a popular idea. People love transportation, and they love like there was this. Well, I think they do. I mean, look, they
love big transportation. Yeah. Big projects.
We will, and in any case, like that, like the rail line that they were going to have through the Northeast, the high-speed rail, it was going to connect New York, Philadelphia, DC. That was extremely popular. Killed by a Republican, of course. But so like I don't.
Why do Republicans hate trains?
Why do they hate everything? They hate.
That's the next.
I could try to answer this question.
I don't think the government can do anything.
But
Republicans are trained.
Republicans love
Jesus.
That's
what they love.
Let me finish my point, and then
Daddy.
Let me finish my point. Then we can jump back into it. So yeah, there's that. I think yes, you're talking about like eminent domain. It'll take a lot of effort to do it. So like yes, buying the land and with the mineral rights and all that. Yeah, but sure. But that's for any project, for any large scale project.
Oh my god!
So I don't see why we would not put the effort in for this. Like yes, there's going to be. Go ahead, you can respond.
So I mean, I totally agree with you. With like, this is an ideal that we should strive for, and that there are these benefits for it. And I'm not so certain that we would win that debate on the marketplace of ideas. However, I think it would be aided or in our benefit to at least try it out inside of a small city, especially where we know that it could be super beneficial.
High-speed rail in a small city? What? That doesn't make sense.
Why would we try it out whenever we already have examples of high-speed rail systems working efficiently all over the world?
But high-speed rail is for intercity travel, not for inner-city travel.
Yeah.
Right.
Just
So,
to quickly,
it's like, to me, it's more comparable to like building the wall, right? Like all of the challenges that come with building a wall would come with maintaining and building multiple national highlights.
No. We already have dozens. We already have dozens of examples of high-speed rails that have already been built in multiple nations around the world, and them working. Your opinion's just wrong. It's just wrong. You can take any high-speed rail.
Homie,
No.
do they have it in Canada? Do they have it in Russia?
I don't know. Who's from Toronto? Do you guys have high-speed rails there?
No.
I mean, they're all over Europe. It doesn't matter. The fact of the matter is there's high-speed rails everywhere.
Oh,
right.
So
you're
they're
not
talking
talking
about.
Not every country is the size of the United States.
So
China has high-speed rail.
Yeah, China has high-speed rail.
But China, that's part of their foreign
Even
policy.
Russia has high-speed trains. Even the Russians
Yeah,
do.
cursory Google,
Right.
they do.
The difference here is, imagine if the military complex was building infrastructure. That's what the Chinese government is doing with the Belt and Road.
Yeah, so we should do the same.
So it's like they have a lot more push there, but
we should do.
I don't think that we're just going to withdraw all of our money out of the military complex to build.
Wait, so
We can fund it literally as a military expenditure if that's what gets your
you
rocks
sell it to
off,
Republicans.
dudes.
You sell it as a fucking
I'm just saying,
military security thing, because just like the highways after World War II or whatever that Eisenhower built, right? Like this, you can sell it as like a national security thing, right? Like we need to have good infrastructure.
I
to
would more
transport
sell it
people.
as an investment in human capital, since that's what it literally is.
So let's some
You would have
other.
to do it like that because, again, if you sold it as a national security thing, that's what Trump tried to do with the wall.
So let's let some other people in. We
Yeah,
will
that
definitely get
project
back to
failed.
you. We'll definitely get
Yeah.
back to you, Ginger. But Dan, you had a point previously. Then we're going to go to Captain A. Jones. Then we'll go to Ginger. Then we'll go to Connor. I see your hand up there. Then we'll go to Dr. K.
Yeah, so I think Raji's like sentiment towards high-speed rails is like a prime example of the problem with American thinking whenever it comes to infrastructure. Like we think
Yeah.
about infrastructure very reactively. Like we move somewhere and it's like, oh man, we have 100,000 people, living in this suburb, but we only have a one lane road leading into town, and then we decide to expand lanes. The infrastructure needs to be thought about proactively. And then to address Moji's point, or I'm sorry, Raji's point directly, like why would we build a high-speed rail system and waste money to test something whenever they've already been built in other places and we can see how they work and we know how they work? Whenever it comes to infrastructure, what you do is you're meeting a need. So if people need to get from point A to point B, you decide how best to do that with the technologies that exist. Is it a road? Is it a bike system? Is it a high-speed rail? We don't want to build a high-speed rail from New York to Brooklyn, because that doesn't that's not going to do anything. It's going to be expensive. It's just overkill. But a high-speed rail from San Francisco to LA, where people travel back and forth all the time, that makes sense. And why would we build a high-speed rail system from one side of LA to the other to test it out whenever there's a need that needs to be met and we could just address it right away? That we waste so much time in America fucking debating the stupidest shit instead of just taking action and implementing strategies and technologies that we already know would work. So I don't understand why we want to waste 5 years building a train system that nobody needs.
God, don't make me
Fucking
think about the
stupid.
high-speed rail project in California.
Let's go. Yeah, I know. It's quite depressing. Let's go to Captain A. Jones, who's been waiting quite patiently. Go ahead.
Thank you, Prime. I totally agree with what Dan Graham just said about like having a high-speed rail program from San Francisco to LA. There's a lot of places in the United States where we can have these targeted high-speed rail systems where it would do a lot of good, have people being very happy. One thing, this was a long time ago, but to dovetail off of something that String said, our infrastructure was built by Dwight D. Eisenhower in the 50s. That's a general. That it was built with the military in mind. It was built. It was not only built with the military in mind, but it was built by military designers. So they just had very little future foresight and concept of how things could be and how things should be. I think like a lot of the problems that we have are going to be really tough to solve because a lot of our infrastructure, a lot of our cities, a lot of the biggest cities, these are already, they've been laid out. Changing the layout of cities has proven to be pretty tough. Making it like more commuter friendly, like people walking around like y'all have been debating. I just think that's going to be really tough. Like I would love to have, in an ideal world, people not using so many vehicles, but I just think like just kind of like almost like with the issue of guns in America, it's like there's so many that we're a gun culture, we're also a car culture, and like having our car. I have a car, and I fucking love my car. I never want to take public transportation again if I don't have to. I love driving. I would rather drive every 100 times out of 100.
But that didn't appear overnight, right?
Totally.
Like
No,
America
I'm
didn't
not saying
always
it.
have a car culture, right?
Totally.
It had
Yeah,
to be
I mean, it was
cultivated and grown.
You could say that the car culture was actually built by the infrastructure. I mean, the infrastructure facilitated the car culture.
Yeah, well, there was a concerted effort to build this culture. Might I let you know, right? Like literally, oil and tire companies literally push to create this culture artificially, rather than it, arising on its own, right? Like this is something that was astroturfed into the American culture. And don't cringe your eyes at me. I have the fucking receipts, and I can talk about it from sundown till sunset.
Sure, I'd love for you to link that data because I'd love to get my mind changed.
It's
But
your turn
anyway,
anyway. Go ahead. And then Salty Sam, I have you as well. Oh, are you done, Jones?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, if I could just finish
Sure.
really quickly. So I mean, really, I was just saying all that to come to the point that I think that any infrastructure deal that we have really needs to be focused around things like EV, the electric vehicle tax credits, and doing things that don't go against the flow of what American culture is.
Nah, fuck that shit.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let's go to we'll go to Ginger, Connor, Salty Sam, Dr. K, and then Dan.
So number one, when a lot of these cities were being developed, right, cars are getting a lot popular. So like they're obviously planning that these things are going to be a thing in the future, and that's why they incorporated city planning into having cars there, right? When you talk about Europe, a lot of these cities were built before cars, and that's why they're much more easily available to go to a people first model, right? In America, these cities were built with cars in mind. It's not true in Europe. I also like to push back on the point that it's like we have to kind of say like fuck Republicans to get this stuff across. I think that we really do need to convince Republicans that this is beneficial, and I don't think this would be too difficult considering that the fact that it is pretty beneficial and there's multiple studies and multiple assets that you can point to.
So is Medicare for
right?
all, though.
It might be more difficult.
So is the $15 minimum wage. So is lots of things.
Yeah, right.
Again, so it's like it's like really hard to say, right? Conservatives typically are for like projects like this and stuff like that, and like as long as you present it in the way I think you can convince them. And then to wrap up my point, basically thinking like I also think that the hardest part about convincing conservatives is that typically conservative areas need these things less than democratic typical areas. Like we're talking about a high-speed train from like San Diego to LA, and like things would be super popular and stuff like that. Whereas like out in like the boonies, out in Louisiana, like they don't need a high-speed train going much places. You know what I mean?
Oh, hell yeah, they do.
Much less than a major metropolitan area.
The entire point, right? Like Samantha, is Samantha even still here? Like Samantha, talk about the fucking village thing they're doing in France, right? You get from your village to a central hub area from which you can then go anywhere you want, right? So obviously we're not going to connect it to one tiny dipshit town in the middle of nowhere. We're going to essentially create a hub from which multiple towns are linked up, right? So you can then take a bus from your tiny town to the train station from which then you can get to anywhere in the country.
Not only that, but these rail systems can be used for a lot of things that the rural parts of the South use a lot, like fucking shipping things and, putting containers on these and shipping food across there. That would save a lot of people from having to be on the road with these big trucks for extended hours, if not weeks, away from their family. You just put it on this fucking rail system and get it to a fucking city on an automated fucking rail. It's not fucking rocket science. Come on, people, use your fucking brains.
I might be wrong here, but like, isn't the reason why we use like freight trains and shit like that instead of like high speed transportation to move these things around is because of the energy costs?
Both.
No.
Okay, actually, can I push back?
Before you do, Ginger, did you finish your point? Just want to make sure you...
Basically, I'm just saying, I think that they can do both is incredibly dumb take, considering that the fact the reason why we have high-speed trains is to transport people, and the reason why we have freight trains is to transport heavy objects.
Oh, but guess what? They closed down a lot of those tracks and rail systems that were carrying freight because they wanted to move it all to fucking cars, because a lot of the fucking, it was the fuel companies did most of this shit, but like, yeah. They closed down a lot of freight stuff, like here in the Bay Area of California, where like California grows a lot of the fucking produce. Most of the fucking railways that were going through these produce companies out in the Salinas Valley and shit, guess what? They're not running. They go by truck now.
Mm-hmm.
So like your statement is the one that's wrong and asinine. Fucking smart ass.
Okay. So let's Captain A. Jones. Captain, you want to push back, and then I'll work my way down the list. And Rajimoto, don't.
Yikes!
I just want you to know, Rajimoto, I put you up there on the list. A lot of people are responding to you, so I'm going to make sure you have a chance to respond to all of this. So don't worry, okay? Captain A. Jones, you can push back if you want.
Yeah. I just wanted to push back against Samantha, which I don't know why I'm doing this to myself. But on the comments of why can't we do both, more is better, which I totally agree with. I totally agree that more.
No, I didn't say why can't. No, I didn't say why can't we do both. The high speed can do both. You can
Oh,
have a car.
interesting.
Yeah, you can have a car on it that just has a fucking puts like the Connex container on the fucking car. It can
I've
be
never heard of
done.
that.
It's just energy inefficient to drive heavyweight stuff like you know, coal or oil or
Well,
whatever.
yeah, depending on what system there are some trains over here that do the same, but it can be done, is what I'm trying to say.
Well,
Okay,
never mind. I guess I'm not
hold
pushing
on,
back against
hold on. Wait,
anything.
wait. We keep having this discussion about energy efficiency and shit. Like, aren't high-speed rails magnetically driven? Am I just wrong? That's my understanding. Like, isn't
No,
it
there's
incredibly?
a bunch of different styles, and
But
magnetic is not
so
the
I'm
most
talking.
common.
So it's not the most common, but we have more efficient ways of moving trains, right?
Let's go to Connor. It's your turn next.
I'm not going to be able to comment on like the fucking scientific aspect of it because I didn't research that or like study that or anything. But when we're talking about like high speed rails, we're not talking about like the two modes of transport we're competing with here aren't like what we're looking at is people driving from city to city and people flying from city to city. And flying is one of the worst fucking things you can ever do if you're worried about, for example, climate change. And this is where like high-speed rail comes to place. That is what it's replacing until we have such alternatives to flying, such as like, I don't know, like hydrogen or electric planes. I don't know if that's possible. I'm a fucking, physicist or whatever, or air or whatever plane scientist is called. But these are the things where like, this is what high-speed rail is replacing, right? And there are other this is what we're comparing it to, right? And if we talk about freight specifically, I also cannot tell you if like you can put freight on high-speed rail, but what we're looking at is between trucks and trains, and believe me, trains are more efficient in this regard. So if we're looking at like what's going to be more like energy efficient, right? We got to stop comparing it between like we have to compare it between the things that it actually is like, going to be taking away from, which is trucks and trains. Not to say that like trucks don't have a place in specific context, but between long distance travel, it should primarily be trains which are doing it.
Okay.
Which is where you would like have some sort of dual system with high speed and perhaps freight as well.
All right, so we'll go to Salty Sam, Dr. K, Dan, and Rajimoto. Salty Sam?
Yeah, for sure. So regarding the high-speed rails, I know this was mentioned a little bit ago, but regarding testing it first in a smaller city, first of all, that wouldn't really make any sense because obviously with a high-speed rail system, generally it's spanning across very long distances, and there's not really any need to travel these very long distance, or there's not a high demand to travel across these very long distances to smaller cities. Also, regarding someone was asking earlier about high-speed rails in Canada, I remembered that that there is actually talk currently still, I believe, of implementing a high-speed rail between Montreal and Toronto. I believe that's the first one that would be implemented in Canada. And yeah, I had it down, but I think Samantha already pretty much covered this. But yeah, high-speed rails can transport goods. So yeah.
Let's go to Dr. K.
Oh, yeah, someone wanted evidence from me of this culture of car usage being artificially cultivated. Whomst was?
I believe I asked for that link. Yeah.
Yeah. The General Motors streetcar conspiracy. Let me get you some information on that. I know it's got a terrible sounding name, but trust me, it's like General Motors essentially bought out every streetcar in the country and tore it up to build highways. I'm gonna get you the proper evidence for that now. There's like some books, there's some papers. Snell 1974's paper is a good example on this. But like Prime, it is popular, right? This investment in mass transit, right? Like I'm with you there in that it is a popular thing. The problem is that who it is popular among are not the people who are planning out this stuff, right? Like the people who hold the capacity for public land use in cities, in rural areas, and at a state and national level are generally highly disinterested from this sort of things and are oftentimes even actively malicious to these types of projects, right? From people who are hardline like NIMBYs to people who at the federal level, you'll often see like lobbyists from car companies, from tire companies, from oil companies, literally pay off legislators and like actively work against any sort of legislation that would be investing away from car-based infrastructure. At a state level, you generally have cowards who are just like unafraid. No, like generally they are unafraid, or not unafraid. They are afraid to use things like eminent domain for fear it pisses off constituents and thus get voted out of office, right? Like they just simply are acting in a cowardice manner. And because of corruption, because of all these factors together, you see a general inability to engage in this sort of long-term planning infrastructurally right now in the U.S.
I would say a big reason is people don't vote for it. Like
exactly, it's like going back to my point. Like infrastructure is boring. People tend not to pay attention to this stuff unless you have a vested interest in it. And if you have a vested interest in it, usually you are a person with power interested in keeping this out of the public discourse instead of putting it into it.
Or you're a NIMBY and you're going to go vote and go to your council meetings and be like, no, don't do this. This is my property. And then whoopsie daisy, nothing gets we get more fucking roads.
And NIMBY, in case you don't know, is not in my backyard. Or those types of people. Fuck those guys. So
all right. In chat, fuck Robert Moses, fuck NIMBYs. Both of those right now. Thank you,
Let's
chat.
go to Dan and then Rajimoto.
And fuck conservative transphobic people.
No, man. How about we just say transphobic people?
And also, fuck Prime for saying that Cheez-Its are bad.
Cheez-Its are fucking bad. Do better.
No, they're not.
Do better.
No,
it's terrible.
What are you talking?
I don't like Cheez-Its, but they're not that bad.
We're gonna fight.
Oh my god.
Yo, we're gonna fight over this.
Poor man snack.
Yeah, Cheez-Its are kind of overrated.
Hey, Eagle Eye, would you say that somebody saying not liking Cheez-Its are fighting words?
Yes. Cheez-Its are the most. They're better than Goldfish. I don't know if there's any better cheese snack.
Better than
Cheez-Its.
All right.
Cheez-Its.
Chat, stay focused on the transport.
Cheez-Its
I'm
are
gonna bring it back.
for hobos.
Right.
Cheez-Its
I'm
are
bring
for
it back.
hobos. Okay. All right.
You're just wrong.
Hobos and degenerates. All right. Dan.
I will link you a fucking study on it.
I'm begging
Fuck
you,
Cheez-Its
chat,
and
stay
Goldfish.
focused on
It's
the
all
choo-choo
about
trains.
vegan crepes.
I want to
Eat
bring
my
it back
ass.
to something. So someone, and I can't remember who it was, and this isn't exactly what they said, but there's this term for some politician here in New Zealand too. Basically, what he said was he couldn't believe that people in the Western world would go shopping by means of walking, cycling, public transport. This isn't exactly what someone said, but they said basically, if you're going to go shopping, right, you got to use a car, and that is not true, right? Like people in Europe, they'll go shopping and they'll go get a train or they'll go ride a bike or they go and walk. Right?
Well, even New Yorkers don't.
Just because what you do now is what everyone is doing doesn't mean it is like the only possibility of something you can do. It's called quaxing if anyone wants to know what it is. But yeah, like this is the point. Like just because something is the way now, like the way it is now, doesn't necessarily mean that that is one, the best way to do, or like two, the only way to do it.
Let's go to Dan.
Yeah. So if we're talking about solutions to these problems, something else that gets missed a lot is there's actually a lot of money to be made from like a corruption side in infrastructure too. So the way that most states, like in California, for instance, their high-speed rail was funded by the federal government. So I don't know what the numbers are, and it's going to vary because what a state has to do is they have to apply for the grants to get money for infrastructure to get built. And oftentimes that's why you end up with these inflated costs and like budgets being overblown, deadlines not being met, is because this money floats around. Politicians are able to incorporate different kinds of projects where they're able to pocket it. Typically it goes into their their own, not businesses, but a lot of corruption's done through charity and that sort of thing. So
my God, you people are amazing.
Yeah. So anyway, it's important to think about that too, where this money comes from, because states aren't just paying for this out of pocket. And honestly, the federal government doesn't really do much in terms of oversight over transportation or infrastructure. Most of that's done at the state level, but the money's coming from the federal.
Okay. Let's move on to Rajimoto. We left a lot of people responded to you, so I want you to be able to respond to anything.
Yeah, man, this is like a note, and when assertiveness might have been beneficial. When I was saying smaller cities, I meant like Houston to San Antonio, Phoenix to like Fort Lauderdale.
Is not a small city.
Phoenix is not a small city. Phoenix is,
right.
I think, the
smaller
fastest
city.
Rhode Island
And
out of
the
Houston.
hub, the big hub goes to smaller cities. A better example would be like Denver to the ski resorts in the mountains, or San Luis
No.
Obispo to Mammoth. Or
The entire point of high-speed rail is you're connecting two disparate large urban centers.
Okay, hold up.
Let him finish, please.
Let me finish my point.
Yeah.
And the reason why I think Houston to San Antonio would be really good is a lot of our supply chain has to drive through Texas on delivery. So when this cold snap happened, a lot of deliveries were delayed, which slowed up business because it's a pretty central part of the chain of where people are driving through. So if we could replace it in that one state with high, transporting goods and peoples on these trains in the state of Texas, I think that would be a great way to show it. And then you would get electoral support for it throughout the rest of the country. I don't know, you could do both for sure, but why not start small? If one of the points against
we're already experimenting on a small scale, if that's what you're complaining
about. It'd be a bigger waste of time to try it on such a massive scale across the fucking country. That's wild to me.
We're already experimenting with it though.
Raji, two things. One, do you think trains aren't affected by weather? And two, we've already pointed out that why would we build a train from one city to another over this short distance whenever these railway systems already exist elsewhere and we can just look at those and see if they work? Why would we build one? Why would we do that? That's like building an igloo to see if igloos work whenever they already exist. It makes no sense.
Right,
but now you have another bit of infrastructure in your city.
Let him finish.
The example would be better here. It's like building an igloo, but you're not in a fucking Arctic climate, so you can only build it during the winter. Like the situation.
You're right. So what if igloos? What if igloos had already?
Let him finish. Oh my God, he's got to finish.
Yeah. I do think that trains are affected by weather, but I also think that they could be built in such a way that they mitigate the damage loss due to weather, much in the same way that windmills can be built to withstand weather better. And they just didn't do that. And that goes to your point about corruption. And I agree with you there. But you're going to fight against corruption on a national scale project to build light rail things against the oil industry. It's just not electorally feasible. Man. You guys are talking about, it's just not.
You can respond to that, Dan.
Yeah, it is. Appeal to grassroots.
Yeah. Okay. So again, right? We don't build igloos in the desert because number one, we just know it wouldn't work, right? So we don't need to do something if we know that it doesn't work.
I said build it in a non-Arctic climate. It's it could be done, but there has to be certain situations that you meet before it can be done. And you're dealing with a different set of problems than you would be if you were living in the Arctic.
All right, you're getting weeded down in the metaphor.
Yeah. Okay. That's it. I don't even want to engage with that.
Revolt Rise, you want to say something?
Yeah, a few things. As far as eminent domain is concerned, ironically, I happen to be one of the people that's suing Trump to prevent him from taking a piece of my land to build his wall on. So that's just kind of chalk that up in the irony column. But as far as high speed rail is concerned, the idea of connecting both coasts and this massive scale project is ridiculous. That's not what we need. What we need is things like the tri-rail that's been proposed in Texas that's going to connect Houston to San Antonio to Dallas and through Austin. That alone, they allows for the cities that are way too overcrowded right now to be able to spread out along the train route, a number of other benefits, including allowing people to be able to transport or live in Houston and work in Dallas and be able to move as jobs move, which is a common thing here with the petrochemical industry. So that's that. The other thing I wanted to say is that the idea that this is somehow politically untenable is obvious, at least to me, but we need to start addressing that fact and get people on board with doing projects like this, because we need infrastructure spending, we need infrastructure replacement, and we also know that there's a certain amount of climate change that is unavoidable at this point. We're going to have some effects, right? So we know that there's we are going to need to either refocus where our populations are currently centered, and or we've got the entire Rust Belt that's going to need to be renovated and made ready for immigration or migration that happens as a result of climate change as that goes on. So we could think a little bit further ahead maybe, but probably not. And But if we could start to try to at least get the political will to think ahead like China does, where they've built cities that they haven't even used yet because they haven't moved or had the need for them, right? Like this would be a great time to start doing some of that stuff. As far as like high-speed rail, one other thing I would just want to say is like there's been a couple of studies that have pointed it out, and like the one piece of rail that I would really like to see done would be like New York City to DC. And like you can run the fucking high-speed rail like elevated in between the 2 lanes of 95 for all but 11 miles as it stands right now, and they already own the land.
The problem with like thinking ahead like China does is that like we pick our president on 4-year cycles and stuff like that. So China has like the benefit, and like this is always the benefit of having like a dictator, is they can think in lifetime cycles, right? They can think in the century, where we only think in like the fucking quarter. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. I know. Yeah, and it's a huge problem. But at least like I mean, if we start thinking about it here, maybe you know what I mean. Like start thinking further ahead, and we have to. We don't have a choice. If we don't do it, we're gonna be fucked. Like that's a simple fact.
Oh yeah, absolutely. But I feel like this is a very, very hard problem to solve, and that's the short-sightedness of like of democracy in general, right?
Yeah.
For sure. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, definitely.
No, I disagree with this. Plenty of democracies are able to plan long term ahead.
I mean, typically not
which ones?
Like Canada, the Netherlands, Japan, like they're all managing to plan ahead and invest in this kind
monarchy.
I mean, most of Europe has this stuff, and they are all in fucking fascist.
Yeah, France.
I mean, it's
Spain,
dictatorships, you weirdos. Come on.
Italy.
You understand that, like, parliamentary,
Germany,
like democracies, you can have a monarchy and still be a democracy, right?
Well,
I mean, I was joking. It's a joke.
Okay, sorry.
Like there are democratic nations that can make and do make these long-term plans. South Korea.
What did you say about Rajmod? What did you say about Mussolini?
Well, I was just saying, like his
It's a
moniker
meme.
was
Fuck off.
Please, hold on. I want to hear what
we all hate Mussolini.
Holy shit! I want to hear what he said. That's why I asked. Please, let me hear what he said. Go ahead.
All it's a moniker is like he ran on the platform of I'm going to make all the trains arrive on time. But all that says is that the trains existed before there was democracy in Italy.
I want someone to smash in my fucking skull every time they say that
you've
shit.
got Italy. Now give us more examples, because Europe's bigger than just Italy, my guy.
Well,
Also, maybe comment that I think it's the democracies that tend to be highly partisan that might have more difficulty planning long term, because you guys are extremely partisan in the States. So that's probably a lot of the reason why a lot of long term planning isn't, because you have to fight for every single little bit. And because of that, all the short term options are going to be like the things that people can kind of tangibly see very soon are the things that people will vote for, right? Because we have a problem here, right? Someone will build a fucking road, and then, like, 3 election cycles later, when there's a different party in power, they'll be like, oh yeah, look at this road we built, even though it was, the people a decade back who started that project.
And like democracies are really designed to have slow, steady progress, because if they didn't, their volatility would be so like stark that like no one would want to be able to do any business with them, right? Like if you could just come, if a president could come and just totally upend the status quo of your country, no one would want to do a fucking business with you.
Such
and
as
don't
Trump.
tell me Trump did that. Trump did not do these things.
He
tried to. He tried to.
Yeah, he tried to, and it held
it's
back.
actually
but
very common.
If you got more whiplash like that, at some point, like, America's sort of credibility on the international stage is going to get a lot more damage, right? Like, let's just say, did Trump do that specifically? No, it appears like Biden's has sort of returned to normalcy, so to speak. But if you got a Trump-like figure next election cycle, and then you whiplash back to, like, if you consistently do that, eventually, like, international relations will break down.
For sure. And imagine if these checks and balances weren't there to slow down like American democracy. Like this whiplash effect would be so much worse.
Okay. So this is where we could take this conversation.
I don't want to take it here.
Because I'm wondering, is it, well, one, I don't have a good view of other countries, right, in their failures. Because like these other countries aren't like paradises, right? Like we can understand that. So they fail all the time. I don't know enough to know how they fail. Like, Connor, like tell me how New Zealand is a complete failure. If you could tell me that, like that would help me. Like what, like how, and what ways, like, what are the sticking points in your democracy? Like, are there projects that just don't get done? Like,
yeah, so housing is basically the worst in the developed world by a mile. Like, I don't know how to explain this. Like, if you go look up New Zealand house prices compared to the OECD over the last like 20 years, and you'll understand exactly what I mean. Like, and these policies are kind of how do I explain this? So this problem is like, it's pretty complex, but basically it runs under the assumption that the people who vote are the people who own houses, and that is true now because more people than not own houses, and because of that, their interests are going to be the ones who are more necessarily like catered to, so to speak. So basically, the last 20 years, that's been the consistent government cycle, right? Like, I remember if anybody knows the Prime Minister of New Zealand, which you might have heard, is this is true. We do a lot of stuff, right? But this is something we do severely wrong. The current Prime Minister is Jacinda Ardern, and if you go look at her rhetoric, tweets are a good example of this. And you go look before she was the Prime Minister, like 5-6 years ago, you'll see that she's extremely like, for example, we don't have a comprehensive capital gains tax there. She was extremely pro that, extremely pro like big building projects, which is what we need, and like all these kind of like housing things. And you compare them to her statements now, which is in power, and it's a massive shift towards like catering towards like the homeowner
Business
voters,
class.
basically. No, it's not even like the business class. It is, but it's not, right? Like this is literally just like people who have a family home and that is all their retirement, everything, and they're not going to vote for someone who's like, you know, we have to like drop the house prices, which is something we have to do here. And because like a lot of the problems you can see in democracies are you just have to look at who's voting and who's not voting, right? Because it's all well and good to sit here and complain about like, oh, you know, like why the roads or whatever so shit in my city, right? But if you don't go to go research like the people in your local elections who, at least here and from what I understand in America as well, these are the people who maintain the roads, and you look at the failures there, and you don't like step out and vote or like advocate for things, these will never get solved, right?
Really?
So whenever you look at another country, you look at like what's going severely wrong. Generally, if you look at who votes, you'll see like the parallel there.
So really, hold on. So are you saying that this pothole outside my house isn't Obama's fault? Is that what you're trying to tell me? That sounds like bullshit, buddy.
Thanks,
so
Obama.
Voter suppression in the U.S. is a politician's like national pastime, and like the entire country is like socially engineered to encourage political stagnancy. So yes,
I'm not saying that like voter suppression can't be a problem in the state, because it obviously is in the States, right?
Yes.
But like if you look at other countries, like European countries, and you wonder why like certain things happen, like let's just say they have extreme rhetoric on immigration, say, if you look at like the way the population thinks in terms of that and like what they vote, you'll understand like a lot more about like how sort of failures happen. So like obviously there are obviously a lot of like complex reasons why things happen, right? Like, you know, for example, a lot of people won't vote for things, usually minorities in the States, because they have like voter suppression against them and they don't have the ability to. But if you look at other countries where that's not necessarily the case, you'll see like who votes generally dictates like what happens.
That's fair enough. I would say the U.S. is fairly weird when it comes to voting patterns, though, and why and how it behaves.
So, okay. So we're talking about this infrastructure, right? And why it hasn't taken place. Rajimoto brought up some points as to why these things don't happen, right? In terms of like the litany of like the political struggle that would have to happen on multiple levels, like of our government, right? The federal, state, and local. We'd have to have a massive struggles to actually get a plan like this in place. I think it's a plan fight worth having. You want to say something, Raji?
Yeah, I would just add that you would also have to like factor in the courts. Like I think it was Revolt Rise who said he was in the court system right now.
Yeah.
So that would also factor into like the challenges.
So
my new point. My bad.
As far as eminent domain and like trying to take over property, it's a concern. But there's a lot of creative ways that we can address that too with property that we already own or that's already set aside for municipal activity. So
so is this what?
Yeah. I don't think eminent domain or any of this would really put. I mean, they would be speed bumps, but if we agreed on an infrastructure solution that required enacting eminent domain, we would get it done. Like everything else would just be speed bumps. So
shit, we can't even agree to pay people a COVID relief.
Yeah. So I agree with that too, right? But that's kind of my point. Is like if we just agreed on this, then it doesn't really matter what speed bumps are in the way. Like eminent domain. I mean, fuck, dude. There could be a whole city in the way of where we would want to build like any form of infrastructure. And in the U.S., if we wanted to get it done, we would move that city. As Patrick would say, push it somewhere else. So
Okay, but do we really need Killeen, Texas?
No.
Yeah.
No.
What was the question?
Yes.
Sorry.
I said, do we really need Killeen, Texas?
Either.
So, Roger,
We gotta let market forces decide where people move. We cannot just move them out of their fucking homes,
Yeah.
right? Or
Why?
we can drive them out.
we can.
Drive them out.
Pfizer in Groton, New London, and they didn't even build the fucking building they were supposed to build. We kicked like 40 families out of their homes. We do it all the time.
By the way, I'm
Yeah.
not saying it's right. I'm not speaking to the morality of like kicking people out of their homes for the sake of like some massive project. I'm just saying, like, all I'm saying is a fact. Like, if we wanted to build a train and there were fucking small towns in the way or people's houses or what the fuck ever, America would do it. Like,
I mean, also like market forces are coercive.
Scared to like kick people out to build a train for the betterment of humanity. Didn't have a problem with like fucking kicking my people out of land, putting us in little tiny fucking boxes of land to build an entire fucking country so they can get fucked.
Right.
Yeah, I just want to interject and just let you know, like, market forces and governmental forces are both coercive forces. Like, to pretend that one is holy and not, aggressively destructive. I don't know about that.
Also, but two wrongs don't make a right. But I'm also
they necessitate each other because you can't have a.
They don't necessitate each other.
No, they don't.
They do.
You can't have an unregulated market. It would destroy the landscape very quickly.
That's not. I mean,
The market is the
sure,
infrastructure.
but
Like, there's a lot of analysis that says this, but like basically, like a country's market, like as far as the economic market is concerned, is its infrastructure.
Fair enough. But when this person is saying market, I think they're referring simply to privatized markets, in which there is not that give and take.
I'm talking more towards the unregulated profit motive. Motive is destructive in nature.
Yes.
So when you have a profit motivated market, you're going to have a regulatory body. They come hand in hand.
Sure, but to varying degrees, right? And I don't think anybody.
Why we should have a profit oriented market.
We should.
That's not now. Let's talk about trains.
Yeah. Let's get back.
Yeah.
Okay.
Did you know that Morocco is actually outbuilding America when it comes to electric trains? That's crazy, man.
So the benefits of having a central committee in your form of communism, okay?
So like per capita, even Morocco, even Uzbekistan is outbuilding America in the electric train market. It's really fucking pathetic for world fucking hegemon.
But no, I actually want to talk about what Samantha just brought up, right? Even if it was just a joke, right? Can we don't go at me, please. Can we actually like is this possible without some sort of central planning? Like, can we in the States?
Yeah, like, define central planning, and I'll interject this one little thing. Like Walmart and Amazon are centrally planned, and like they do pretty good, right? Like why is central planning a problem?
Yeah, central planning that could be having some sort of committee, some sort of infrastructure committee that actually has some power behind it. That we could decide. Like the thing is, it's difficult within a democracy. I just don't know the best way to do this because
it's not difficult. We already have planning committees in any city or township you have a planning committee. You already have a planning committee. There are many committees to organize your entire city already in place. What's wrong with having another overarching
the problem
one?
is
less committees. You need less committees.
The problem is not having like consent, like democratic consent towards these things, right? Like if you look at like fucking China or whatever it's planned, like there's not really democratic consent when they just decide to go bulldoze like a bunch of villages to build like a fucking dam or something, right?
Yeah.
Like the problem isn't necessarily having like some sort of planning; it's having it not being consented to by the populace.
So there's that. And then on a related note, it's that like in democracy, yes, we can change our minds, right? In terms of like leaders and direction, right? So eventually, especially, and Connor did a good job stating it, something we've talked about here before, is that yes, we do have that whiplash here in the States in terms of like Democrat, Republican. Well, we'll reverse, like, not completely reverse, but like parts of our foreign policy will be completely fucking reversed. We saw it, Obama, Trump, then Biden, like reverse. Like imagining that in terms of infrastructure, like how could we actually do a long-term plan? There's no way something like this gets done within 4 years or 8 years, right? Within a single administration. So how do we?
You need bipartisan consent. Like that's the only way to do it.
Yeah,
And
but
obviously it's very difficult in a country like America, but like you'd have to, like I said, you have to sell like the train idea on something like military, like defense or some crap like that. Because I'm pretty sure, if I remember correctly, every time there's like a military bill, it always gets voted through with like massive bipartisan consent. And if you tax on something like this and got people to like agree with it, like this is something you could do.
You
I mean, one of
you
the
wouldn't have to tack onto a military bill. You could tell people that, hey, like your small communities or like your rural towns, you want a job in the big city. Look, you can still live near your family on your family's plot of land you took from fucking my people, like God knows how many years ago. But anyway, like you could get a job in the city and not have to worry on a car because you might not have the money to like afford a car or ways to get there, or like hitch a ride with a friend or take a fucking Uber. You can open up job opportunities. You can open up there's so many opportunities being able to just leave your little tiny town, leave your village, leave like your city and go to other cities in a fast, reasonable amount of time. Like a lot of the Silicon Valley people, the high-speed rail in California, going back and forth between LA in like a fucking few hours rather than a plane flight every day, twice a day. You know, like there's a lot of jobs that require a commute now, and we're finding other ways of working. But like you can get people from these small rural communities into jobs that they never would have been able to think they could have.
Yeah, I'm not saying like military is the only way to like sell this. I'm just saying it's like
what would your
way I can.
ancestors? What would your ancestors think of you advocating nationalized transportation service?
Well, to be fair, if you want me to get my real thoughts on my ancestors, they were could get over drinking and their cycle of substance abuse and get off the res and see how the world works out here, they might change their opinions on some things.
Probably not.
Go ahead, Dan.
Yeah, so to hop in here real quick, like we've spent a lot of time talking about trains, but realistically, there are more important things to address in American infrastructure, and infrastructure isn't just road systems and that sort of thing. But if we're just going to talk roads, for instance, like we have bridges falling apart, we have potholes everywhere, and the best way to mobilize people, especially a bunch of people, isn't to be like try to motivate them in a positive way, like, hey guys, hashtag build the roads. Like, no, you go hashtag like fuck potholes, and then you mobilize people in a negative way. Like, get people to see what the problems are. People, want to commute. They don't want to be driving over potholes or across bridges that are about
a lot
to
of
fall
these
apart.
things. A lot of these things are local government problems, and people just don't fucking vote in local government elections.
I brought that up earlier, but again.
There's a hilarious thing right now in our capital city where all the water main, like all the water pipes, they're built like 120 years ago, and they're all just exploding and just sending like sewer and shit ever, because basically like the local council just consistently like threw off the infrastructure costs until it's become like such a massive problem that you're literally having like sewage come up into the street in our capital city, right? Yeah, and that's because one, when local government people go in, they don't do the nitty gritty stuff that nobody fucking sees, like pipes, and two, nobody votes in local elections, so there's like a 20% turnout, maybe if you're lucky, where people like vote for something, even though this is something that like far more directly affects their life as opposed to like, the presidential election. It's like, if you want to fix like, roads, potholes, you want to fix like, lead in pipes, right? Like these aren't necessarily things that you're going to get solved by the federal government. This is like the state, in the state specifically, the state government or cities. And obviously like
I just want to jump in real quick and just say this tidbit. I think all of it really depends on like increasing taxes, and I think the challenge for us is coming up with creative ways to like circumvent that.
Like, cities have very limited form of,
raise taxes.
Yeah, cities have a very limited form of.
Like, I know. I'm saying like instead of
I agree with you. People don't like the
legalizing.
They don't like the ways.
Okay, one at a time. Go ahead. Finish your point, Rachi.
I'm saying instead of focusing on taxing people, we just look at things like legalizing cannabis and using that as an excess tax so that people will buy it and then use the funds from the tax.
No, raise the taxes on the wealthy.
Like we don't like if we do it. The federal government doesn't need to raise taxes in order to spend money. Like so, we can avoid all of that stuff by going with the federal.
Legalize marijuana and excise tax it like we do with alcohol.
Legalize marijuana. You don't need to create some awful sin tax, right? Like tax it like you would any other good. And then raise the taxes on the wealthiest Americans who literally need their taxes raised desperately.
I'm not talking about the federal government here. I'm talking about local and state governments.
Yeah.
And
I was going to say,
you don't have like fucking magical money you can put in. Like you have to be fiscally responsible when you run a city, or you go bankrupt like New York or.
That's why nothing.
I get it.
So Marks, you can jump in, and then after that we'll go to Salty Sam, then Sam the Human. Go ahead.
Yeah, so Connor brings up a good point. Well, generally speaking, yeah, raise the taxes, but when it comes to like infrastructure and roads and that, a lot of it comes down to like you have to determine what your city budget is and like how much your city is putting in it. So personally,
Yes.
for like yeah, personally for my city, we have a gigantic budget and our roads are actually like pretty good, but that's mainly because we're like a tourist attraction. And like our roads like have to be optimal for like get people to get places and like
Mm-hmm.
travel, buy stuff. But the thing is that we don't spend a lot of stuff on housing, and that's biting us in the ass, even though we have a gigantic budget. But like that's just something like locally you have to look into, like just
Yes.
realize how much of your
Yeah.
city's money is going into what you want it to go.
Like
Well,
a problem with like like raising taxes locally isn't that like people are necessarily. I imagine if you could convince people that like if their taxes are going to rise, but you're going to actually see meaningful like change, like fixing potholes or like
Mhm.
like fixing getting homes and stuff. Like you could maybe actually like convince people that raising taxes is a good idea. It's just because when a lot of people look at like what happens with like taxes when they're in cities, they just see like some bullshit that's happening that's like not really the proper problem in like the city or wherever it
Here's
is.
some issues if I can lay it down for you as someone who spends way too much fucking time in local politics, right? One of the big problems is a lot of wealthy cities have purposefully left larger municipalities that they're part of. For example, Beverly Hills has literally purposely de-annexed itself from Los Angeles as to form essentially a interurban tax haven, right? Meaning that you are seeing wealthy residents literally siphon themselves off into gated communities such that these urban areas that need to raise these money can't do so because it's literally a different city this point, right? So this is why sometimes this would have to be raised at a federal or state level where you can't fucking tax dodge as easily, right? And you need to raise their fucking taxes for the wealthiest Americans to up to like 50, 60% and say, fuck you, you're giving it to us. You gained your wealth off the back of this fucking country. Now you're paying back into it, motherfucker.
Another good
And
example of that is
wait,
like
well,
censorship.
bitch, I ain't done fucking talking, all right? I love you, but like, sorry, I'm a little incensed right now, right? And what you do is once you raise that at a federal level, if you are not able to do so at a municipal level, right? And I want it raised either at a state or a federal level, is then you can disperse those funds in the forms of like direct sort of incensed payment. You say like, all right, you get $400,000 to do X or Y thing, you know, like direct, like you'd say, you literally write the bill, you say, this is what your money is going to, and then you give them the money to do the thing, right? Like this is a common fucking practice, right? This is how
It's
we
about ring
do.
fencing.
What's that?
Like it's ring fencing when you set aside like you say like this
Yes,
is the money we're
exactly.
ring fencing this for fucking roads or something, and then
Okay,
yeah.
finish your point so then, because we got to move on.
Yeah, I'm done.
Okay,
It's all
great.
good.
We'll go to Salty Sam. What did you want to say 15 minutes ago?
Yeah, for sure. So kind of running parallel to the talk of the high-speed rails, I think another thing that we could really improve on in North America in general is our air travel prices are like insanely expensive compared to what you see in Europe. It can be it's generally like 2 to 3 times more expensive to travel in North America than traveling anywhere within the EU, and that's something that we could definitely use improvement on. And another really big piece of infrastructure that could use some aid is Wi-Fi and phone bills, because when you compare both of those again to Europe, we're like it's not even close. It's like almost an order of magnitude off. You can get a plan for unlimited texting and unlimited calling and a gigabyte or two of data across the entirety of the EU for like $15. And compared to like anywhere in North America, it's like $100 to $150 for the exact same thing. And these are things that, like, now that people are starting to kind of acknowledge the fact that Wi-Fi is probably something that we should consider close to a human right, and like we should probably be working on fixing this, because there are currently like essentially massive monopolies running these sectors, and
I don't think you want to
that could
encourage
really
people
use-
to do air travel. By the way, it's if you want like the number one thing you can do to like lower your
I
carbon
see what you
footprint
mean.
is just to not fly. Like if you go look up like what the footprint is for like flying,
huge.
even if it's domestic, I think it's actually more bad if you fly domestically. But like the actual carbon footprint is like massive, right? Like it's probably better in some ways to just drive across the country as opposed to like, you know, actually take a plane somewhere. Obviously,
I think
it's different time.
It's much worse
Right.
domestically. The
Yeah.
biggest like contributor is like when you're taking off, and well, mostly just taking off actually. So like the longer the flight is, the better it is for the environment. So like if you're doing really short flights, it's really bad.
When you
Also,
say
like-
massive,
Yeah,
you-
that's true.
it's only 2.5%. I actually was looking into this earlier.
2.5%.
Like that doesn't
regarding what?
it's 2 point air travel accounts for 2.5% of global CO2 emissions.
Also,
Like you can look that up right now. There's like what do you call it? There's like effects that happen after that, but the immediate direct impact is they contribute 2.5%.
yeah, but I think he's talking like per person, right? So like one person, if you take a plane ride, that you're leaking out like an average number of carbon, whatever that amount is, and that's not even going to be close to if you just drove a car, right? It's gonna be so much more because like a plane, realistically, like a big plane.
No, planes transport large amounts of people, right?
They
So
transport 200, maybe like 200 people, right?
My
But-
guess would be that if we could just transport people in plane. Now, this is not what I'm advocating for, but if we were to switch from like cars to just planes, if that were possible, because we're transporting more people in like one vehicle, I'm pretty sure it would be more efficient than car travel.
Guys, we can just fix all of this by
and
getting better trains.
Also, I need to
The
like
other
fix this.
problem.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah. So I guess now that he's raised that point, the other problem that we could see with air travel is there doesn't seem, at least currently, there doesn't seem to be a way to reduce the carbon emissions that these put out. Whereas with cars, we've got the increase in EVs, and with trains, we can power them using clean energy. So that's another thing. Now that Connor's mentioned that point, that would be another thing that we'd have to factor in.
Sorry,
So air travel would be.
To specifically mention air travel, like per, I say kilometer, but in your fucking stupid distance, miles, right? Like the per passenger, it is
What did
far,
you
far
say?
more. Your measurements are all shit in the States, and you should all be ashamed of yourselves.
Kilometers?
Freedom
What the fuck
units.
is that?
That's all
Kilometers.
you know,
Is that a food?
Fahrenheit,
What
the
is
most
that?
logical of all the temperature measurements. Anyway, like the actual carbon footprint, like per kilometer, is like way higher for domestic flights and than driving would be, right? Like if you're looking at like longer flights, it can be better than cars, but domestic flights specifically are like someone was saying like short trips or whatever. Those are really, really like, you don't want that.
Yeah.
Well,
switch
it really
crazy.
depends on how many people are in the plane. I did the
Oh,
math
sure.
one time. A full 747 is about the same amount of fuel as driving.
But if you put 4 people in the car, it's the same thing.
From where to where?
Yeah, there's
Well,
there's so many
well,
variables
well,
that, like that's
together.
impossible to say like that. But the point is that like
Comparing to train.
it isn't efficient, and there's no like way to find new efficiency in flying really. So like we're back
Unless
to
you get like hydrogen or electric planes, which I don't know if they can. Oh, it's possible in an engineering perspective, but yeah.
But it'll be a ways away compared to like all
It's
these
far
other
away, yeah.
methods of
Well, this
transport.
is my pushback on Wi-Fi as well. It's like Wi-Fi is so. I think it's first of all it's super expensive to get like long range Wi-Fi things set up that are weather resistant, things like that. You live in Canada, you said it's going to be really, really hard to get these these towers up, expensive, that are going to be snow resistant. And I think like there's multiple issues that we need to tackle first, like our roads and stuff like that. Like the conversation we're having right now before we can get to
Well,
Wi-Fi.
that's true. Like to put this specifically, this is what some stupid, dumb fucking chat said. But when we talk about like, because he said Wi-Fi is not like a human right, but you can have rights, but you can't actually have access to what they're supposed to mean because you don't have like the actual conditions for what they are. And in modern era in like developed countries, internet is something which is like the difference between having like good internet and like not having good internet is actually really big. Like I can go around with my smartphone, right, and I can look up any fact in the world or whatever. Like I can do all these things, and the actual access you get from having this is so far like above and beyond what you would get without it that it is something that we should probably, at the very least, treat as a public utility. But in some ways, like, it is something that's integral to the modern sort of human experience.
And
the
just
economy,
as a quick response,
it's integral to the economy, just the same way the electrification was like a massive like a boon to the economy during the last time we did a new deal in this country. Like this, what we should be doing is winding out reliable high-speed internet to everywhere in the country. Like every house in the country should have broadband access, and like that's something.
Can we take one problem on at a time? Like, can we fix potholes and maybe like get the lead out of the water and Flint?
See, potholes is like a silly thing to say because like most of the potholes are like the things that we have problems with potholes are bridges that are falling down, right? And like we need to like fix that, but does it make sense to build bridges for more car capacity than we currently have if we could replace them with a train? You know what I mean? Like that's the part of the discussion that we're supposed to be having.
You can also do more than one thing at a time. Like,
so we've got like in the United States right now, like we've got like roughly 40 million people or so that are either out of jobs or are working less than they were before the COVID situation. And like, so we need to like put these people to work. Like we're gonna have a massive unemployment like problem, and we're gonna be in a depression for a period of time, at least a couple of years. So like this would be a great time for some public work, right?
Just a quick response in regards to the internet thing. I believe my
Ninja,
understanding
please,
of this.
if you could mute yourself. If you can mute yourself.
Oh fuck yeah, sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, so my understanding of this is that a lot of the problem regarding the current Wi-Fi prices isn't so much to do with the actual infrastructure itself. It's a lot to do with the monopolies, where there's essentially like only two actual companies that essentially own the rights to use these the infrastructure that is set up. And because of that, even when you get these smaller companies, they're buying those rights off of these like 2 or 3 companies that own the infrastructure. And because of that, you get these massively inflated prices when you compare them to like other places that have dealt with this problem in different ways.
Well, it's just the settings of the market are obviously in the wrong way, because like here, the way that the actual infrastructure is dealt with is like I think there's one company that basically builds it all, but it's like basically directly to the government. And then any other, I don't know if it's necessarily any other company, but like unless you're in like a secluded like rural area where like the actual lines aren't going, you actually have quite a lot of choice between like internet companies. And I think if what you're saying, I'm pretty sure that, like if you were saying like one specific part, you may have access to 2 internet companies, and they can do whatever the fuck they want. They can just gouge the prices, and you don't really have too much recourse. So that's more like the market settings aren't necessarily appropriate to what you want.
Sam the Human?
Yeah, so I was going to go back a little bit on like the pothole stuff again. We talked a lot about like voting locally and getting people involved. That's a huge deal that we talk about a lot on here. Every time I've been on here, I think we brought this up. But getting people involved locally is like a huge deal. Like all politics are local politics, right? So we need to be able to like get people out and vote, and get people interested in infrastructure is a really hard thing because, again, as we said, it's boring. Another thing that I wanted to bring up that
all right. Well, that is a shame.
It was about to be.
It was a good time to leave, I guess.
Oh man, that sucks.
Bye.
He waited so long. He waited so long.
Yeah, fuck, I actually feel bad for him.
Yeah, I actually feel bad. Well, if he comes back, we'll have to jump right back to him.
And there's high quality internet infrastructure,
right there. Infrastructure problem right here. In front of your face, folks. And if you want to fix that, then give to this channel. Then we can get the word out.
I think the funniest example, like this is kind of a little bit off. Basically, in Australia, they had what's called the National Broadband Network, and I think when it was proposed, what they wanted to do was build basically like fiber to every single house. And then there was like a change in government, and basically they swapped it to it was instead of like fiber to every house, it was fiber to the node, and it was like basically like you put the fiber in all like the main lines, and then when you connect the houses, you use copper. So it was like completely pointless and did nothing. It just provided like the most terrible internet to people. And like if you ever talk to people in Australia and they like know about that you'll get them to cringe every time, because it's the most like hilariously stupid like thing you could ever put in.
It's like putting like a end of like a kitchen faucet onto the fucking fire hose. I forget what all right.
By the way, do you guys? Oh,
go ahead. No, go ahead. You haven't.
As far as like the internet thing, how do you think like who should like own like this internet, would you say that the government should like give money to like private like companies, I don't know, AT&T, whatever, to actually build these internets that everybody can have access to, or the government should build it for itself and that it just be state owned? What do you
So
think?
can I ask? I'm not 100% on this, but like when you build like power lines or water lines, is that like the actual government is the one that does that, or do they subcontract it to other? Because if they're the ones that do that, I would say you
It
should
depends.
obviously treat.
It's
Depends.
usually all right,
Depends on where
usually
you're at.
we get money. Like we've given I forgot the number, but honestly I think it's $2 trillion. I think it's $2 trillion. But somebody can correct me on that. It might be 200 billion. I don't want to be an order of magnitude off, but the point is we paid a lot of money, right, to get AT&T to get broadband internet to everybody in the country. And instead, what they did is they changed the definition of broadband internet from like 20 gigs or 20 megabits down to like 5 megabits. You know what I mean? Like they just completely ripped us off. Like we've already paid for the freaking shit. So like we have to do something different this time because it's obviously not going to work the way we did it last time. It's just like not profitable for them to run lines out to farmhouses. You know what I mean?
There is big problems with like public-private partnerships, regardless. But so this is like the kind of thing when you're treating something like, should you treat it as basically something that everybody needs to have, or is it something that like you can actually have like partnerships with private businesses? And some things you can do that with, and they can succeed in specific contexts, but other things like it just won't work. And
we should have,
for example, what you're saying, like it's not profitable.
The government,
yeah, it's not profitable for a company to go to a rural area and provide them internet. That's why it's far more expensive in those places. Like if you get like the only option you have is like say satellite internet, it's going to be like way more expensive than you would if you had a fiber line.
I'm just gonna go quick. Thanks for the chat.
I don't
It's like
necessarily.
240.
Thank you, Raji.
Yeah, I just want to. I don't think that it's necessarily better to privatize the internet services, but I will say that whatever we got going on right now, I don't think is indicative of what we could do.
Well,
right? Like
I'm
I think
I'm personally interested in mesh networking.
Like I think that we should have a backbone of like either like very highly reliable copper or fiber, whatever it takes to make it so that every house in the country has access to broadband. Because like our economy is now shifting to be online, right? Like there's a certain amount, there's a certain like element of everybody's life that's done in online shopping. So like from an economics perspective, like just people not having access to that market is costing us money, or it's like costing businesses customers. So like it doesn't make sense for us to not do it. And also like again, like we've got this giant network, right, that's kind of like haphazardly put together with like this company here and this company there, and there's no incentive for the capitalist companies that need to make quarterly earnings to spend any money like doing upkeep on it. So everything's just aging, it's getting worse, it's getting less reliable and slowing down, and we should be going the other way.
I think we should enforce some antitrust laws on the ISPs.
Oh yeah, hell yeah.
All right, I'm gonna go anyway. I should probably do some meeting work, but I want everyone in this goddamn chat to sub to Prime, okay? Like Prime to Prime, like it's literally in the names. I mean, you're getting Bezo bucks, just give them to fucking Prime. Just don't let them sit there and do nothing, all right? And get some other subs to Prime. And maybe we get another hype train going, and then Prime can go on another like 10-minute chill, which he absolutely should be doing because this man deserves your money. Because I don't know, for the last like 6 months or whatever. Probably longer. You've just been here like every night, and yeah, just applaud you anyway.
Thanks so much, buddy. Have a good one.
I wanted to ask, like, when it comes to like monopolies and like antitrust laws, there's something I've been going back and forth in my head. Like, there's some monopolies, at least I think they're monopolies or something along the lines that like, like I really like for example, like Google, right? We would consider that a monopoly, but it's a really good service. Or like Disney. Something like that, Warner Brothers, like you would consider those like monopolies. Would you guys, like, if you had the chance, would you break up those companies?
I would.
Yes.
Before we,
I think you raised an.
Before we jump into it, we're going to jump into this.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't want.
No, it's fine. I just want to welcome our newest members, our newest guests. Anyway, thank you, Clearus, for coming through. Thank you, Stardust, for stopping by once again. Hey, buddy, and also thank you, Robertson. Robots. I don't know. Roboterson. There we go. Who is so kind as to use a Prime Gaming here on the channel. Welcome to you. How are you doing?
I'm doing good.
Yeah.
I just figured I'd stop in.
Please, thank you.
You guys good?
Yeah, we're happy to have you here. So yeah, we can jump back into it. You were talking about breaking up tech, or
Yeah, like breaking up, like because there's some monopolies, or at least I would consider them monopolies that I really fucking like Google or like Disney, like Warner Brothers, like things along those lines. Like, would you guys break up those monopolies? Like, I've been going back and forward in my
Yeah,
head.
like
Wait,
Verizon.
wait, how is Disney or Warner Brothers a monopoly?
No, there's just something I think like Disney.
Google's
I don't
arguably
care about those. Yeah, Google and Amazon are the ones that are biggest concern, but Comcast is like another huge one because they own controlling interest in NBC like news, right? And so like the for a company to be like owning the like means of distribution and also the means of the media, like I think is like just it's a no-brainer. Like that shouldn't happen. Like same thing with Amazon and Google. Like they're providing us the server backbone for like serving a bunch of the internet and also advertising to us on the internet. You know what I mean? And it's like they have access to so much specific data that they can easily like crowd people out of the market and like manipulate like like businesses access to things. Like I don't think they should be able to do that.
Yeah, I just looked it up. Disney's not a monopoly. But yeah, Google's under fire for being a monopoly now.
Yeah. I think Google and Amazon are like the main ones that like you can go after for being monopolies, and then like Facebook arguably has like way too much access to your data, and like that's a separate thing because we haven't really quantified what data is worth.
So I don't think these things are strictly monopolies, but they're like we're existing in an oligopoly system. Oligopoly system, you know what I'm talking about. Anyway, yeah, so there's only a few players, right? I think going back, we can still tie this in with the infrastructure conversation. Going back to internet, right? The fact that the major telecoms have carved up the nation into their little fiefdoms, right? We've seen that. That in some places you only have one choice, right? One or two choices. You have to bounce between them. If you're lucky, you have two choices in many areas, right? So why not smash that? You know, we could keep it on the infrastructure. Why not one either break these industries up, right? Or bring some regulation to it, right? Like one of the big problems was, and I'm not sure if this has been settled. If anyone knows, please correct me. But from what I remember is that it was decided that new players can't use like the wiring, right? That the old players, right, like Comcast has already laid down. From what I
This happened to Google Fiber.
Google Fiber.
And they tried rolling it out.
Yeah. Yep. They wouldn't even let them put anything on the pole. Like that, they were saying like, oh, you can't use our pole. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, or conduit. They had to like repole or like dig for all the lines. And like when it's too expensive for Google to do it, you know, like something's wrong.
Yeah. I mean, well, you should always get consent if you're going to use anyone else's poll. That's obvious, right? But beyond that, yeah, polyamorous tech companies. All right. So beyond that, yeah, this is a big problem. So new players like Google, and Google was having a fantastic service from what I said. I'm not sure if anyone else has different information on that, but I was excited about Google Fiber, about that experiment. But it just died on the vine, right? We have a powerful company like that could not break it in. So that the tech companies are too powerful. The regulations are tilted to their side. So what do you guys think about that? For instance, like we could say that making internet like a public utility, right? And so like these guys don't have that kind of control. What do you all think?
I know like SpaceX is hopping into this with their can't remember what it's called right now. Starlink. That's it. Yeah. I believe they're running not at 5G specifically. I think it's a lot higher than that. But yeah, they're doing like satellite-based internet that allows them to get into rural areas a lot cheaper. And so like here in Canada and in rural areas in the States, they're able to cover such large area at so low cost per customer. Like there's bounties currently that the US and Canada have, and lots of countries have, for getting internet into these rural communities, and they're able to make it profitable or potentially profitable for them by going after this like hole in the market.
But are you concerned with having like tens of thousands of satellites blasting the Earth on every part of the surface with a signal?
Not,
We have the
not
sun.
because
Like the sun
There
is
are
literally
no.
the same thing.
not from a space
There's
view,
radio waves
No,
everywhere,
no.
man.
not from that
The
perspective.
Yeah, it
main
is.
thing,
It's
Yeah, it is.
the
electromagnetic
main thing that
radiation. It's
concerns
literally the same
There
thing.
are there are radio waves everywhere. You can't escape it. No,
the main thing that
there's no
concerns
problem
me
with
about
it.
that.
Starlink
main thing
was
that-
funded
okay.
primarily through like InQtel, like by the CIA. Like I really don't want my internet access from the CIA. Thank you. Like we don't need a better option than that.
Look, the
Hey,
fact of the
I
matter
mean,
is,
can I
is
just
if we
say
if
I
we
wouldn't mind CIA internet access.
So I think actually when people are talking about nationalizing like utilities, they're not saying like federally. They're saying the states buy out their utility companies and run them themselves. And so I don't think that because each state has because of
Yeah,
the 50
totally
states we have 50 different systems. I don't think there's this big. I don't think we should be so scared of the CIA internet.
Well, no, Starlink in particular. Like I think we should have infrastructure that doesn't require like us to subscribe to Starlink. Is my point.
You
I
can
don't know what that is, so.
incentivize private businesses by offering money. We do this in
We
other
already did that,
industries
and they
all
just
the
burned the
time.
money. They took the money.
We did this specifically for internet. This
Yeah,
isn't
yeah,
true
yeah,
because
like,
we do this all the time. The
Yeah, I
federal
know, and they
government
always rip us
incentivizes
off,
private.
that's the point.
That's not true. In science, this is how science works. You incentivize scientific research with money. This is why
Cable
SpaceX is
companies
like,
are already funded
Sure,
by
sure,
the
sure.
government. If you may
Science
not be
research,
aware.
but
right. But
most
there's
of
no
it is not science
there's no
research.
mandate at the federal level to solve an issue, right? So in space flight, what they do is they set forth like a specific requirement for a vehicle, or they say,
Right.
hey, we need this kind of vehicle to do this thing. We'll offer you this much money if you can meet this need, right? You can do the same thing with internet. Like, hey, we have these rural areas, we need this this level of speed for internet to be available to all people in this area. Whoever the first, because every area typically is going to have at least 2 providers, right?
Right now we have that's not the case though. That's the problem.
No, I think that most areas have more than one internet provider as an option. Whether or not the other provider is good, I'm pretty sure in most rural areas even there's more than one option. It's just typically one option is shittier than the other. So you can incentivize these internet companies to meet a specific need with money. We do this all the time. It's successful. Not saying it's the best way, but it's a way that we could do it.
Oh, it's the best way.
Stardust.
Oh, I was just I didn't have anything to contribute to this. I don't have a whole lot of knowledge in this area, so
Okay,
yeah.
fine, that's okay. So, but yeah, I know.
No, can I just ask?
Yeah, go ahead, please.
Question? So, like, I think that publicizing or making it into a public option or whatever the hell for the internet, I think that's a good idea. But I'm just kind of curious, like, who are we focusing on when we make that a public utility? In the sense of, like, are we focusing on like high broadband, or are we focusing on like profitability of the utility? And like for the socialists in the crowd, like where does the worker factor into the public utility?
Like I mean, I'll let anybody else answer. I know I'm kind of dominant in this discussion, but let me just say, like community-owned ISPs, I think is like a really good idea. Like personally, as far as a model, and I think that the like that way, like it gets rid of the incentive to sell your data and do a lot of the shady shit that the other places, other ISPs have been doing. But the infrastructure I think should be rolled out and like paid for federally, and like we have already paid companies to do this, and they just didn't do it. And like so, like that's where we're at. I don't think we should like give them another chance to. I think that's silly to do it that way.
So okay,
I think
right, but they had like a profit incentive to do that. So like, how are you going to regulate it to make it so like the quality is the main concern?
Sure, like we can set up like an internet like agency, like, and you know what I mean, and make them in charge of it, right?
Well, what about like using the Bureau of Better, or like the Elizabeth Warren's whole shtick, the consumer satisfaction, Bureau of Better Businesses?
I'm not sure how that. I'll let anybody else answer. I don't know the specifics of her deal and how that would interact.
So I didn't hear. I was a little distracted, but like someone bought a public option for the internet. Did someone say that? Okay, well.
Yeah, I did. I was kind of flubbing on what I wanted to say, but I
no,
more
that's a good
meant like
idea.
a public utility.
I think that's a really good idea. Yeah, it's a public option for let them compete with us, right? Like, I mean, I would love to start nationalizing things left and right. Oh my god, I just love doing that. That would make me so happy. But on the other, another thing is they can keep their shitty services, but if we offered a, but only here's the only thing. Here's the only thing that is scary about that. Like, I don't want the government to just like have access, like own the means of communication, right? We have in Congress, it was FBI Director Christopher Wray talking about like the problems with having end-to-end encryption, saying that like the FBI is not being able to see, can't see into our communications, right? So that's a problem. So we should probably do something about that. We should maybe not have that, or weaken it, or have some sort of back door, so the FBI can definitely make sure they know what you're saying on the internet. So for them,
like,
what?
I like what I'm hearing from you is like maybe using a model of like the post office would be a better model for like an internet public utility.
You mean?
Yeah. So
okay.
So just not to be the bearer of bad news, but a lot of the ISPs, most of the major ISPs already kind of work with the government.
No, yes.
Yeah, and in selling our information and giving it to them as well. They're also buyers of information.
This is true.
Use a VPN.
Yeah, this is true too.
Where's the sponsor?
Yeah,
Where's
it's a
your
solve all to
NordVPN
everything, right?
sponsorship?
Yeah, this is sponsored by what was it?
NordVPN.
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 You guys had it on the tip of your tongue. Yes, sponsored by NordVPN. But I think so. So what you're talking about, Rajimoto, is having like an agency, right? It's like a public trust, maybe. And them running the internet, so they're separated from that. There's a layer of separation from the government. Is that maybe what you're talking about?
No, I'm saying that you have an avenue that's controlled by the government. So like the post office, the government could just use it for free, but everybody else could use it, and it was regulated in such a way that they kept the costs low, so that they could compete with other privatized services like FedEx or USPS.
Yeah. That's what I'm talking about in terms of yeah. But
that already happens on a municipal level with certain cities, like especially in like there's places like Chattanooga, Tennessee, known as Gig City, where they basically have extremely fast internet that is municipal broadband. That's completely public. It's not run by a company.
I think the issue comes down to like who owns the cabling.
Sorry, go ahead.
Like a lot of the internet throughout the states is like the ISPs themselves are putting in the cabling in the ground that runs, like whether it's fiber or copper or whatever. A lot of it's paid for, at least in part, by government bonuses or whatever that they give out, like incentives. But the government doesn't actually own the cabling, and so I think if there was to be a public option or a public, like if the government wanted to own it, they'd either have to buy this cabling or roll out the whole cabling for themselves again, which would be like a tremendous cost.
Right, but the main thing is that they have to have the ability to use like the right of way. So say for example, there's nothing that those companies can do really to effectively stop a municipal company from erecting new poles or basically digging new ditches and burying cable that way. So that's really the primary problem, and usually municipal agencies already have access to all that stuff, and it gets pretty easy usually to access that. It's just a matter of getting the public to get on board with actually doing municipal broadband because it's expensive.
Very expensive.
Again,
Hi guys.
And bye. Have a good one.
Oh,
the
have
issue-
a good one.
So what we're trying to accomplish is we're trying to make sure that everybody has access to internet, right? Like I don't know if you could get everybody on board with the idea that maybe internet should be paid for, but for sure, like water, I would say everybody should have the opportunity to access it. So again, there's a few ways that you can accomplish that, right? Like if we want a state-owned, which I don't, but if you wanted a state-owned or state-controlled internet, then just eminent domain that bitch, fuck the companies, government can do whatever they want. Otherwise, again, I mentioned this earlier, the government can incentivize with money for these companies to, lay, like if the government fronts the cost to lay lines to every house that needs internet access, the companies will do it as long as it's paid for. These companies are just trying to make money. That's it. So, and then also, I don't think that is internet affordability really like an issue. I think it's
Yeah,
what is it in? I think it's like 35. At least where I moved from, which was Clovis, New Mexico, little small town, right? We could access like 25 megabits a second, which was usable, not for gaming or anything, but usable internet for like $30. So it maybe incorporate into the welfare state, like some sort of you know government funding for paying for lower income people's internet.
Yeah.
So the nice thing about like laying fiber and things like that is that the fiber really doesn't degrade much, and you can get you can increasingly improve the bandwidth basically just by improving the end stage hardware. So basically the hardware that talks to each other on either end of the cable can improve, and basically you don't have to lay new cable. But a major issue, I guess. Sorry, I lost my thread there.
Okay, well,
you're saying a major issue.
Yeah, I guess a major issue is the upfront cost. The monthly cost, like I think for internet in Chattanooga is like for like I said, for gigabit internet, I think it's up and down. And for Google Fiber was extremely reasonable for anybody who actually had access to it. So I guess really the point is that if you can get people to actually sign on to the initial cost, the monthly cost is really inexpensive for how much you get, basically.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and in terms of like infrastructure, I guess I didn't even think about it before, but like I think the number one thing we could do for this country is provide uh better and faster internet throughout the country, especially in the places where it's not so readily available. Like I'm in San Francisco, I can get fast internet, but there's a lot of places.
Same thing.
Yeah, so like okay, so for me it's not a problem. For you it's not a problem. But there's a lot of people where it is a problem. I think we've seen some of the problems here on the panel tonight when people have been trying to speak. That's an infrastructure problem. That's people who need better internet. And I think that it would be a huge boon for the economy. Like I put stonks as a joke in chat, but like I mean that. Like I think it would be a huge boon.
Like, can I ask you guys a question?
Yep.
Go ahead.
Rather prioritize internet to the internet infrastructure or high-speed train infrastructure? And what do you think would be a bigger boon to the economy?
Internet. We've already paid $2 trillion, and like I looked it up, and we've spent over $2 trillion to giving to private companies to get everybody in the country access to broadband internet. And like what they did instead was like change the definition of broadband to make it slower, basically. And then like not everybody still even has that.
And access means is always different from like a guarantee. Like if you have internet, like we can guarantee.
Right. Like, yeah, we had the rule during the 30s or in 40s. There was the rural electrification program, right? Like they put telephone poles up and they fucking ran wires and they put electricity in every farmhouse in Nebraska and like, you know what I mean? And like everywhere in the country, everybody had electricity, and that was a huge boon to the like economy, basically, because like number one, like people have to buy light bulbs now, and like but also like people could read and people could use catalogs, and then like with that there was like a access to telephones, so they could do call and make orders, and like then eventually television, radio, you know what I mean? So like that is where we're at that same point, basically, but with internet. Like getting internet to everybody is going to be like a path for the economy to function in the future, and it's a great investment.
So when you're talking about things like rural internet, where basically there's very few ISPs, and the ISPs that are there can only provide like intermittent coverage, and usually the speeds are pretty terrible. That's where something like Starlink can come in. But like I said, I was trying to say this earlier. I have my own concerns about Starlink. There's things that can happen when you have that many satellites in space. I'm less concerned about any kind of like radiation or anything like that comes from the signal. I'm more concerned about things like the Kessler syndrome. I don't know if you guys are familiar with this. Kessler syndrome is basically when one satellite collides with another, and you basically have so much debris that debris then destroys more satellites, and so on and so forth. It becomes a cascade effect that basically takes out, potentially, if
Communications for the
Starlink
world.
Right. It basically would destroy all the satellites that we have in
Why
orbit.
would you
And not
think
only
the
that, it
Starlink
creates a bunch
system
of
would
space junk.
specifically be the thing that initiates that, though?
Potentially, we don't know much about it. So I mean, we haven't seen it yet. It's just like a hypothesis, something
Yeah,
that could
but
happen.
but I mean, I get
But
that.
then-
I get that we should not have as much space junk up in the air, and I'm familiar with what you're talking about. But why is it like if it's? I mean, it's like a weird thing to bring up. Like if this particular project would cause that.
Yeah,
No, this is
there's-
actually
setting up
true
so
because
many-
it's because of the number of satellites. What is you probably know, but I think
would-
it's like
I think
20.
they said around
It's like the-
5,000. I think would have to be around
that's
5,000
right now,
satellites.
but I no, I
Yeah.
think the
That's
goal
stage
is for
one.
like 26,000. I think it's
we're
a
at
lot
next-
more.
So if I said that there was like a million boats in the ocean, would we be really scared that a bunch of them would start running into each other?
Well, the boats aren't
Space
traveling at
is a lot
10,000
different.
miles an hour.
Yeah.
You know, at
The other
relatively
thing
the same
too
speed.
is that we can, even though we're really bad at it, if we wanted to, we could clean up debris that's in the ocean. In space, that's a way more expensive and difficult task. Like
And if
that's
we're relying on the internet, like it just like if it goes down, we lose communication and we lose like 911 access. We lose like all sorts of stuff like data for important systems like banking and everything. Like we just don't want our infrastructure to be more solid than that. Like at least I do, and I think like running the physical is like a good excuse to burn some money and like put some people to work in the meantime.
Yeah, if
You
you want to
could
be a
potentially
multi,
even you could potentially even lose more critical systems like GPS and stuff like that.
Right, yeah.
Technically, GPS satellites are usually geostationary, so they're
They're
much
geos,
further
yeah.
out. But the thing is, you could actually have potentially even like space debris that just constantly interferes with the signal and just gets in the way. I don't know if that's really a possibility, but again, this is something we haven't really seen. Like the Kessler syndrome has never really happened, so you could have more downstream effects than we actually anticipate.
So would you?
Well, I'm gonna let in Kobe. Has been waiting patiently. Hey, Kobe, one of my illustrious mods. How are you? Still working on it.
No audio.
Okay, all right. Well, my illustrious mods are not known for being pro streamers, though. But anyway, so
I forgot I had push to talk on.
Oh, there you
Forgot I had push to talk on. Sorry. Anyways, I want to talk. I actually am a very big proponent of nationalization. I call myself a beefy sock dem because I want that big beefy state that can take the market on. I'm a sewer socialist, exactly. Anyways, so there's a little country in Russia in Europe called Romania. And Romania, after World War II, sided with the Warsaw Pact. They became a socialist country, and socialist country. They were a Soviet country, and they did many things wrong. But one of the things they did right was towards the end of the Soviet Union and the sort of the Warsaw Pact in general, the various Soviet satellite states basically fell into two main camps. Are we going to become just basically authoritarian dictatorships like Turkmenistan, or are we going to become basically like bureaucratic neo-capitalist states like Poland? And in Romania, they're called technocrats. The technocrats won. The technocrats were kind of thought that we could use the modern modernity. We could use like the computers and satellites and stuff. We could use this to build socialism. We could build essentially a planned economy that would be run by like a big AI. And so Romania, they spent a ton of money building a very, very good internet infrastructure. Right now, Romania has the third highest rates of internet downloads. One second, I think it's like Switzerland. Yeah, it's like Switzerland and Sweden, I think, are the other two ones. And obviously, they're very rich countries.
Thought South Korea was at the top. I'm sorry.
Sorry, in Europe. In Europe.
Yeah,
just in Europe. Yeah, of course. Yeah, South Korea. Yeah, but yeah, in Europe, it's like Switzerland and Sweden, and then Romania. And Romania is a relatively poor country. I don't know if this is still true, but at least within the 2000s, Romania had more people leaving the country than being born because of other economic opportunities. But they have really base internet. There was a meme back in like the 2000s that the only people that could quickly download the game Stalker were Romanians because Romanians have good internet. But yeah, nationalization of these things are just good. There are certain things that are just so vital to the economic life of a country that having them up to the blind economic forces of the market, it's not good. It's okay for PlayStations. It's not a big deal if it's hard to buy a PlayStation for a couple years. It's not a big deal if it's hard to buy a GTX 380 because Bitcoin miners are buying it. It is a big deal when you have people in rural Oklahoma that are basically running on the internet of like North Korea because just it's not profitable for Google. Or as I'm sure people have brought up, I've been cooking. I'm sure people have brought up the ton of money that we've sunk given to these companies to build fiber and to build that this thing never do. So yeah, all of this is just this is just needless waste that ends up hurting the economy and also hurting the social and economic life or the social and cultural life of people. It's not, a lot of culture now is done on the internet, and it sucks that there are many people that just don't have access to that. So yeah, anyways, yeah. Nationalization is based.
Revolt Rise brought up what you were talking about previously, yes, and Kobe bringing a really great point as he usually does, talking about like the culture that happens. Like so many people are just completely left out, right, of what's happening here. Like, and first of all, I mean, I guess this is kind of a self-serving argument because if there's more people on the internet, more likely we'd get more donors, a few more million people on the internet, a few more million possible donors. But it's a travesty some places, like their speeds. Some are stuck with satellite, right, and not apparently the Starlink thing. And like the speeds are just terrible. And of course, when it went with inclement weather, good fucking luck. I remember I had not satellite internet, but satellite for TV. Oh,
I was gonna say. Another thing is
I still have satellite TV.
It causes extreme wealth disparity or educational disparity in the post-COVID age. There are many people that are going to be doing in-home learning for probably, let's be honest, probably at least six months to probably 12 months, right? For in some places of the country. And I saw a video it was a cute video, but it was a kid doing a virtual PE, and he's bouncing around his living room, and his grandma's on the couch, and she's having fun too. And I'm thinking to myself, that living room is bigger than my apartment. The idea of like, what if my nephew had to I don't think I could do VR in my apartment. I don't think I have the room for any of this, right? Not to mention internet speed. I have good internet speed. I have a nice computer. I have 2 monitors. What if I didn't have that? If you don't have that and you're a young kid and you have a crappy Chromebook and you're trying to do, have Zoom running and the software running, you're at a disadvantage, and that's going to more heavily affect people in poor and disadvantaged communities everywhere, right? So yeah. Internet, equal access to internet is a good just on economic, social, every single level.
On the education front, then I'll go to you, Dan. On the education front, I they had internet, quote unquote, right, but it was extremely expensive and extremely slow. So most people didn't have it. Most people were stuck, like if they needed the internet for school, going to their local McDonald's and like hanging out in the parking lot there for internet. This is the thing that happens all across America, where people just like hang out in their cars if they have a car, outside of McDonald's or some other store like that, and use their Wi-Fi. This is a big thing. And so what they did was for schooling, they had like these drop boxes where you could like put your homework, and like that's how they did it, like just bounce back and forth like that. And it's a travesty. It's a travesty. I mean, it's great that those educators are doing what they can within their difficult situation, but it's an absolute fucking travesty. Dan?
Yeah, so forgive me if I already mentioned this earlier, but there's 2 problems that need to be addressed. One is affordability, and the other one is physical access. And I don't think I don't know enough to know, right, whether or not nationalization is the answer, but I don't really think it's necessary because we're watching the free market as it exists in America kind of confront this problem, right? Like Starlink will give access, like you'll be able to access internet from anywhere. The question is, can you afford it? I think the monthly Starlink is going to be super affordable, but you do have to pay like $500 or something for the satellite dish and then know how to set it up, right? So then it becomes an affordability question. So maybe the private industry can address this problem of access, and maybe the government could front the cost for the setup.
Not to be a free market shill, but if you look at like most goods, especially electronic goods, they've come down in price dramatically over the years. So I would assume it will start off expensive, and that's of course going to exclude people, but the price will come down hopefully
And
level.
Sorry, 1 second. It's also important to be realistic with like how many people don't have access to internet. I think right now, and this is still too many, but I think right now it's only like 6% of the population. Somebody in chat could
they're
probably do a
probably
little bit more
mostly
research, but-
rural too.
It
I would
is.
assume.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
and that's like people who don't have access. Period. Right? Like that doesn't take into account people
That
who have
doesn't-
really shitty access.
Oh, and that
Right, yeah.
that might does that take account into like mobile internet? Because some that could be internet, quote unquote. So it depends. I don't know.
Well, and
So Starlink is also a housing issue, right? So my apartment does not allow us to have any kind of satellites. We're not allowed to have that at all. Most apartments are not going to have that, and we're talking about most people in America have access. That's true, but this is a problem that's similar of looking at wealth. If we just look at wealth altogether, that's not very with everything. It's not a very good indicator because, like for example, white families have a lot more wealth than black families, and black families and white families have infinitely more wealth than the average Native American family, right? And so we have to look at internet access per region and per different groups. Native Americans have basically Native Americans have Mick access. They can go to McDonald's and they can get internet access. Well, I would assume that the rate of internet access for white people is probably going into the 80 to 90%. For most.
I'm gonna push back on this. I'm gonna guess that if you look at considering that most people without internet access are living in rural communities, it's typically the Midwest, and those populations are typically whiter. So I'm just as concerned as anybody else about making sure that.
Yeah, I may be wrong there, but regardless, the housing issue still presents itself. Starlink is something that you need to be able to do it, right? Oh, and also with nationalization, it's easier to do something. There's a name for this, and I just learned it like 2 days ago. But anyways, okay, so we can have certain products, and we can say this product costs $60. But if you make under $20,000 a year, this product only costs $30 for you. We could do that with internet, where we could say internet, the base internet package for America is $100 a month. But if you make under this amount of money, or for this specific region, or for this specific state, it's only this amount of money. We can do that much easier with nationalization versus the blind free market.
I don't think that that's necessary. Like, you don't need nationalization to do that. Again, we already have a welfare system.
It's
we have
easier
food
to
stamps.
do
You can provide an equivalent to like food stamps for the internet.
But why would we continue to give money that really turns into profit for corporations? Like,
Yeah,
why would
precisely. Yeah,
Because
we have to
the
create a
corporations already have the infrastructure.
But we've already
And
put
because
$2 billion
It's-
for the infrastructure.
And because a corporation has a profit motive and thus an incentive to keep things lean instead of I think that government like nationalizing should be saved. I get their urge to nationalize everything. I get that kind of urge, but I think that we should really save it for things that should be like human rights. Like internet should be.
Do we need
Hold on.
a nationalized grocery store system?
No.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we could.
Like the private market's already addressed this.
What?
And the same
No,
thing does happen with internet.
no,
Yeah.
no.
That's our hate talk too.
That's a fight. So, Captain A. Jones, finish your point, and then I want to jump to Adam, who came in later.
No, I mean that was my point. Yeah,
Adam,
I just think that the private markets are going to be better for some things, and nationalizing are better for other things.
So the idea that profit motive keeps it lean, that is true. But what does it mean for it to be lean? What it means for it to be lean is that people in Native American reservations, people in rural communities get shit internet, and you get really good internet if you live in Chicago or LA or a rich place, right? And I don't think that's good. I think we need. I don't like the idea. Well, again, I am a SOCDEM. I do believe there are many problems with the free market that should be solved with a welfare state. I don't think that in this case, trying to have propping up these companies for something that the nation needs so much really makes sense. While it is true these companies built this infrastructure, I'm sorry, I'm a social democrat. I don't really care if they did it. It was actually they didn't build it. Workers did. The workers built it. They were not out there. They're not hammering this shit down. They're not putting poles in the ground. At the end of the day, if we want to nationalize it, I believe we should. So,
okay, let's go. Excuse me, Adam.
Yeah, I guess one of my biggest issues with like nationalizing the internet is it just seems like we're kind of jumping the gun. Kind of to the point that like fuck. I'm so sorry. Kind of to the point is like we have this idea that like, oh, everyone should have internet. I don't think anybody disagrees with that. Like everyone should have access. And there's lots of ways that we can motivate the private market to do it rather than like put money like because like the amount of like how much it would take to like make the private like to take the private market and nationalize it, that's like a big deal. There'd be so much like administrative costs and stuff like that, and it seems to be like maybe there could be like some incentives that we provide like the private industry to like expand to areas where like it's not profitable to do so, do stuff like tax credits or do stuff like government subsidies, or like in another way we could also kind of like give private companies money to offer like low dollar income plans. And then the other thing I kind of want to point out is like I don't think like it's necessarily that poor neighborhoods don't have access and rich neighborhoods do have access. Now in terms of like being able to afford it, yes, but this is like 100% like a population density issue, not a poor person in LA has good internet and like rich person in LA has good internet and a poor person out in the middle of nowhere has good internet. It's because they're out in the middle of nowhere that they have no internet. Internet is extremely cheap to give if you have a lot of people there. This is actually something really cool. Like apartment complexes often have like really good internet options, not always, but they often do because like you have like a lot of people there and it's cheaper to give internet to each individual person so they can lower the price of plans.
Do you think Kanye West takes his ass out into fucking rural Wyoming, gets one like megabyte down a second? No, he has good internet because he's fucking rich. It is a class issue if we're talking about the rural areas. Poor rural areas have shit internet. Rich rural areas have good internet. I've lived in rural areas. I know this is true. I gotta make it such an anecdote, right?
But it boils back down to money though. If there's
I think sorry, what I took from what Adam was saying was basically you end up getting an economic disparity in those rural areas and not necessarily in the areas where there's high population density. Another major issue also with Starlink's not even meant to be for high population density areas. That's not what it's for. You get drastically lower speeds the more people that you put on each one of those circuits. So that's not a solution for people in high population density areas.
Go ahead, Revolt.
Call me crazy. I don't want to put our internet in the hands of a megalomaniac son of a South African emerald billionaire. I don't know. That's me. I'm crazy. I don't know. I'm crazy. I don't know.
And I don't want internet in the hands of Donald Trump.
Right.
I want it in the hands of the people. I don't want Donald Trump in office either.
There's solutions for this that are super easy, right? Like community-owned ISPs makes the most sense. Like, so the government is responsible for maintaining the wires, the cables, and the stuff that comes over it is served by like individual ISPs that are owned on the state level or the county level or the town level or the community level, whatever you want them to be. And like that's a model that's worked in other countries and it works very, very well. The other thing
Cuba has like an underground system like that where it's
as a point of data, right? According to the FCC, there's 21.3 million people that don't have broadband access. According to Microsoft, there's 157 million that don't have broadband access. Microsoft's using the actual technical definition for broadband, which is 45 megabits per second down and 20 megabits per second up. FCC is using 25 and 3 because that's what they talked them down to so that they could technically have provided broadband internet to most of the people that we gave them $2 trillion to fuck us over in the first place, just as a point of talking. I also want to say this, like we haven't talked about it. There's 2 million people in the United States that don't have clean drinking water in their house. And there's more than that don't have running water in their house right now because of like failed infrastructure. And there's over 3 million that don't have access to clean drinking water, which means they could be drinking lead or whatever other toxic chemicals in their water. So we need to fix that too.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah, I think that's like a really good point. It's like pointing out that just because we nationalize something or make it like or like even like heavily government regulate something, for example, like power, doesn't mean that there's like it's a faultless system.
Well, I don't think anyone implied that these systems will be faultless one or the other, right? I mean, look at anything run by humans and nothing is faultless. So we can understand that. But one, having either a public option, which has its own dangers, but a public option, right? Or understanding like the private market has absolutely failed us. And sorry, I just have to address this one part because you brought up Dan, right? No, the private market has not solved the issue of food distribution here in this country, right? If they did, we wouldn't have such a thing as food deserts, right? We understand that the private market only operates where it sees a profit, right? We see this with well, literally in any private market, but like it brings up like FedEx and UPS, right? We have areas where they not going to serve. Like those are postal deserts, whatever. Areas that they refuse to serve because they know it's not going to be profitable there, right? But the government absolutely has to deliver, right? Like it's a mandate. The post office has to be able to get the mail to wherever, right? If there's a residence, it's got to be able to get there somehow, even if it's just like maybe to their local post office. We've seen in what is that? Someone knows this town, so you'll help me out here. But that town in the south, like was it in South Carolina or something, right? Where they created like their own municipal grocery store, right? Where government stepped in. Do you know what I'm talking about?
I do. I can't think of the name of it, but I know how to look it up real quick.
Yeah.
I've never heard of that, but that's fucking badass. I like that.
Yeah,
So-
that's dope as fuck.
Yeah, so but like it's a cheaper option, right? Option because they had to do that. They didn't want to. This is a conservative town. They didn't want to do it, but they just didn't have a grocery store. They couldn't attract one to service their market. So they created their own. It's cheaper and it's healthier because you can decide as a town what do you want to be served there, right? It's a better option overall. The market failed us once again. So yeah, I was gonna say something else, but I forget what it was.
Yeah, and I totally think in these instances of these food deserts that you're talking about, I think that it's a totally viable and legit strategy for the government to come in with something like, the postal service, where you, like you were just saying, how FedEx won't go there, private markets won't go there. Well, if there is a need, then the government does have to step in. And I mean, even like I wouldn't even be opposed to the government having like their own competitive grocery store, postal service grocery store style type of thing, where it's competing with companies in the market. So I'm not opposed to that. I just think it overall, I just I don't like the knee-jerk reaction to nationalize
Also,
everything.
like nationalize. So, like a really good example is like the food desert thing, because like our response to food deserts isn't let's nationalize all grocery store chains. It's
I
like
didn't say that.
let's find a way.
Yeah.
No, I'm not saying no one said that.
Okay.
That's the point.
Okay.
No one said like let's nationalize all
Thank
grocery store
you.
chains. It's like why don't we find ways to get groceries, like use state funding to get groceries to the people who don't have it? And what is the most efficient way to do that? Now in internet, it's a little different because infrastructure is expensive in that case, like very expensive compared to grocery stores. And so nationalizing might make a little bit more sense, but like jumping to like, oh my God, these people don't have internet, so like we must nationalize it is like, I think a little bit of like putting the cart before the horse sort of thing.
Salty Sam?
Yeah, so on the topic of food deserts, I actually have some kind of firsthand experience because I've done a lot of traveling. I used to go to a camp where we would do these long canoe trips in very northern areas in Canada, and a lot of the times we would end in or near native communities because we were up near like the like James Bay, Hudson Bay area. And they have like some really bad food desert problems there because the only access is by train if they're lucky enough, and sometimes just by plane. And so what you see there is you see regardless of the food, you're already going to see massively inflated prices. So things will cost like literally twice as much. And for like perishables, like vegetables and fruits, and generally the more healthy things that you're going to find, it can be insanely expensive. And a lot of things they can't even get out there just because it'll spoil before it can even get out there.
Yeah, I've heard of that same situation in places in Alaska where just things that cost like $5 in a grocery store anywhere in the country will cost like $30-$40. I watched this mini documentary on it, and it was just, yeah, it was nuts. So I totally get that, and that's kind of what I mean. Like I'm totally in favor of the government coming in and subsidizing those people, especially because I mean they're still working jobs that need to be worked. I mean, they're not. It's not like this place is there for no reason. There's an economic incentive for them to be there. But the undue burden of paying for normal items, paying up the wazoo from normal items like that is just an undue burden on poor people. So that's not okay, and we need to do something about that.
Revolt Rise sent me an article here that it was in Florida. I was surprised it was in Florida. I thought it was somewhere else. Anyway,
there's other ones. That wasn't the one I was thinking about. This article in particular is interesting.
Okay.
I just thought.
Okay, yeah. But and it's funny because like the one that I was thinking of, I'd seen it on the news in terms of the grocery store town. The one I was thinking of, the people there were conservative, and they refused to call it social. I'm like, no, this is not social. There's nothing socialistic about this, or like public ownership about of our industry, of our infrastructure, or anything like that. No, nothing socialism about that. But they did it any which way because they realized it was a better system, and they were happy with it. They were happy with the result that we got.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I would say I think it's really interesting when you talk, like, socialism is almost equivalent to like Nazism to a lot of conservatives, right? And so I think what's really interesting is like the stigma around that word, and like just saying like workplace democracy changes the stigma around it, right? We're saying the same thing, right? Like economic democracy, right? But it doesn't have that like socialism stigma, I guess.
It stands for the National Socialist Party, don't you know?
Yeah, that's right in the name. What I was gonna say too is it'd be really nice if we had a national bank. Like national banking would be such a not in place of private banks, but to compete with them, to keep them honest and like
We
so that
have credit unions.
Well, I mean, it'd be nice if we could do it nationally. It'd be way better because the government can print
Yeah.
money, and like the credit unions don't have access to
Yeah.
like loan initiation in the same ways that like regular banks do. But that being said, like the point is basically like they took $12 billion in overdraft fees last year, and like they banks have figured out how to get $12 billion out of people with nothing. So like that's kind of cool in a way, but also fuck them. Like they
That's
should
also why
be
credit
turned
unions are desirable, right? The credit unions are pretty good.
I mean,
'Cause they don't
they're
have-
very limited.
So
They're
yeah,
very
the problem that the national bank sounds great, but I always thought of it on the state level, the state banks, right? Like we've seen in South Dakota, you have massive amount of funding because you can fund state projects through these banks, right? Like they're like infrastructure banks, and it's a cheap, low cost option. Of course, the other one, if you guys even with the national bank, that you can just make that to the post office. I guess that'd be the option, right? But like it's a cheap option. There's so many people who are unbanked within our society because we left it up to the private market, and the private market once again failure has left all these people, these poor individuals, unbanked. That's why they're left up to the mercies of those pay. You know what I'm talking about? Payday loan. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
They're left up to the tender mercies, the payday loan scams, right? Or those they're also the check cashing places, right? They go there and they take a big chunk of their paycheck every time. So instead, we could have an option, a public option, right? Either through the post office or whatever, that they could all access, right? That everyone can be a part of, and so we can almost eliminate the unbanking situation here in the States.
Right. If we're gonna arbitrarily
I would just like to point out,
label. Go ahead.
historically speaking, the post office used to be a bank.
Yeah.
Back in the day.
Way back, yeah.
Not even that far. Not even that far back. It wasn't that far back.
We just bought a bunch of.
It kind of built the West in a way.
I think it was less than 100 years ago. It was even less than 100 years ago. It was still a bank.
And
let me spit some radical stupid shit. The post office becomes both a bank and an ISP.
Oh, there you go.
There you go. They're already
The fastest and slowest way to move data.
Oh
God. So
hey,
look,
it gets there though.
Dan.
But I mean, in all seriousness, it would be good to have somebody, just an option, because like shipping services do compete lower than the rate that the post office is offering. So if we want to lower the rates of ISPs, that's just a good strategy to take. It doesn't necessarily have to be the post office, though. You know what I'm saying?
Dan?
Yeah, so whenever I think maybe there's an optics issue here. Okay, maybe we should Maybe we should define nationalize, right? So for you guys, and this isn't the end of my point, but I just want an answer first before I continue on. Is nationalization, does that mean we're getting rid of private competition as well?
So what we were
Or-
talking about is a public option just now. Like the post office, like making that a bank again, will make it as a public option. So it wouldn't be like nationalizing all banks.
Okay, so if we're offering the same thing for internet, then I'm all for it. That's fine. But if we're talking like no, only the government's going to be responsible for providing internet, that's literally one of the stupidest. Like if somebody has that take, that's a dumb fuck take.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so yeah, because I guess I'm call me pedantic or semantic or whatever, but like I guess when I hear nationalizing, what I think of is I think of nationalizing the utilities, which means that there is no more competition for that utility.
But like
and
competition with utility burns down California every year.
No, we should nationalize utilities. No, yeah, we should nationalize utilities. Absolutely.
I agree.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Well then, all right. Well then, you're.
But I guess like yeah. So I guess like maybe I'm just being pedantic, but yeah. Like PA would say, a pedantic fuck.
Yo, it's pedant, you pedant fuck.
Yeah, so also too though, just to address you Prime directly, I think that calling like if we were to look at the other way, right? If I had a business and I like everything is optics, right? So if I had a business that was servicing 94% of the country, right? Let's just say an internet. Like I have an internet company and I can say, hey, you know what? My business is servicing 94% of the US population. Instead of looking at the 6% I'm not servicing and saying that that's a failure, I would look at the 94% that I am and say that that's probably a
So
success.
what's the example
So I
of
wouldn't
any of
say-
this? Like, what? Give me an example of this.
Okay, well, you said that the free market has failed
Yeah.
to deliver service to people in,
Sure.
in rural areas. I think, but the way that you use the term failure indicates that they've failed as a whole, which isn't true. I would say the government has. The government
No.
is supposed to come in
The
and
government
fail
hasn't
everything.
failed. No. I'm saying the government is actually providing the service. It's already happening. That's what I'm saying. In terms of post office, they're providing the service everywhere.
Right. But they're not doing it for the internet, which is a failure of government, not the private market.
So you're saying
I was saying
go ahead.
because we gave them standards and we said we want 45 megabit like with 20 megabit up like when they signed a contract and they failed to deliver on that. That's what I mean when I say failure.
That
Like
what I would agree with. If they agreed to that and then they didn't deliver, then yes, that's a failure for sure.
Yeah.
But I think we're confusing like the idea that like a business is failing and the idea that a market has failed. So like a market failure is like when a government like when a private business like inefficiently is distributing goods or like they're like so like the ability for internet companies to give internet to rural areas is like a market failure. But that doesn't mean that like internet companies have failed to give internet to like the vast majority of Americans, right? There's like two different things.
Sure. Okay.
Well-
I could get on. I don't know if I completely agree with that, but I could get on board with that.
Sure. I mean, in the end, it's capitalism failing. So I'm injecting some socialism into your capitalism is what I'm doing. But I think I understand you're making a distinction there, Adam. I see what you're trying to do. But yeah, I feel we've seen these when it comes to critical services, right? When it comes to food, when it comes to housing, when it comes to food, housing, internet, when it comes to electricity, like we've seen, like Revolt Rise mentioned what happened out in California, right? That used to be a state-run electric company, whatever the name is of that place, that one, what is it? The name of the California? It's
I don't know.
blanking on me. All right, but it used to be state run, and it used to run well. But then they privatized it, and to make a buck, they decided, well, we're not going to do the proper maintenance, and so we had those wildfires, those terrible wildfires. People literally died. Saucy Sam.
Yeah. So something that I wanted to touch on when you mentioned payday loans, and I think it kind of interweaves into all of this, is I think one of the, if not the biggest failing of our current education system is I think we like have an incredibly poor system set up to teach people financial literacy. And I think that's one of the things that could like massively contribute to like almost every single one of these problems. It would help people with their housing. It would help people pay for like literally everything. Like the fact that people don't know, a lot of people until like this recent surge don't even know that like investing really exists. The fact that people want to pay off their houses early, even if they have like a 2% interest rate. Like there are a ton of things that we should and absolutely could teach everyone in just the public the public education system that would like massively help class mobility and just help a ton of problems that we have.
I agree with that.
Yep.
Yeah, I'd agree. I didn't realize until like many years later how like little a lot of people knew about finance and banking. I luckily grew up with a parent who works as a banker, and the idea of like not investing your money or like paying your credit card off every month, or like that's not infinite. You actually have to pay it back at one point. A lot of people learn through example, but even doing that once can wreck your credit score or like your life for like ages. It takes years to recover. I've actually got to head off, but this was very fun.
And thank you for coming. Please come back. We'd love to have you.
I definitely will. See you guys around.
Yeah. All right. Where do you want to take this? Anyone?
I guess on the topic of education, what do you guys think about No Child Left Behind?
It's garbage.
Oh, man.
I don't think we should leave children behind. That's pretty fucked up. Come on.
Some of them are really mean, dude.
It depends on where you're going, I guess. If you're driving off, you might want to leave them home.
Fuck him. I don't care about them. Leave them all behind. I don't care about children. No,
There's an old George Carlin joke that talks about I think it was a program under George H.W. Bush called Head Start.
Yeah.
He goes, Head Start, left behind. I think we're losing fucking ground somewhere. So anyway.
Yeah, one thing. I guess one thing I wanted to add earlier, I wrote a note about it, so I might as well say it because there was some pushback on Starlink. I don't know what the fuck Starlink is about like this thing. The question that I wrote down was, would you be against a space elevator because it might be damaged and fall back to Earth, causing catastrophic damage, even if it were to bring like infinite power to the Earth? I'm thinking like Gundam 00, if you've seen that. Would you be against it though because of the like possibility of this? Because like I just didn't find that argument against Starlink very convincing. Like you could probably convince me. I don't know what it is. So
It wasn't
convince me against it.
It wasn't an
I think-
argument.
Yeah,
It wasn't an argument against Starlink.
Yeah, exactly. I think Starlink is fucking awesome. I think it's
Yeah.
really cool. I think there's concern about issues like the Kessler syndrome, but when it comes to something like a space elevator again is not moving at like 10,000 miles an hour through the vacuum of space like all these.
Technically, the top of it is.
It's moving. Yeah.
Well, okay, so technically the top of it is, but it's not in competition with all these other things that are at the same height as it. So it's basically it's close to the Earth. Technically, it would end up going up and then coming back down. Relative to the surface of the Earth, it's not moving.
Well, I'm pretty sure that actually the top of a space elevator would be further up than where the satellites.
No,
right, but it goes straight up. It goes straight up, right? When you think about a space elevator goes up. It doesn't.
Well, not if you have
move.
a ring of orbiting.
Hold on. This is really important. So we have different levels of orbit, right? Done for different things. So the purpose of a space elevator is to reach low Earth orbit, and the idea was conceived because of how expensive it is to use rockets to get a kilo or a pound worth of something into space. So a space elevator would greatly reduce those costs. But a space elevator is not like even though it's attached to the ground, you could still say it's in orbit. And the point at which a space elevator would be I don't know how we got onto space elevators, but where a space elevator would be in low Earth orbit. So no, I
Yeah,
don't
the point-
even-
the point
that's
was
just
that-
important to bring up. So
No, hold on.
But the thing
From
is, it would be a low Earth orbit, not moving at any speed relative to the surface of the Earth, right?
Yeah,
but
so that's the
but-
issue with the Kessler
But that, yeah,
syndrome.
that means but what about on the top? But like the point is, it's fragility of the network, right? Like line cable that's buried in the ground, pretty secure. Satellite things floating around in space, not that secure. And we were also overdue for like a solar flare that could cause the like we've already seen this happen in the 1890s, right? Like there was an EMP
Like
that
a
happened
full-scale
and fried
EMP,
every
yeah.
fucking Bell telephone in the country. And so like we're assuming that something like that might happen again, and like there's no hardening on that for that situation.
So I
don't know about that.
I very quickly looked it up, and actually, satellites orbit at 36,000 kilometers, and the top of a theoretical space elevator would be about 42,000 kilometers. Checkmate anti-space elevator.
No. This isn't true. There are different altitudes for orbit, and there are different there are.
Look,
more
I looked it
oval
up.
Orbits,
I looked up in 5 seconds
cool.
on Google. I'm right. All right.
You look like a science bitch.
Yeah, but seriously, you can extend satellites into orbit even out past the moon. Like in fact, there are a couple of satellites that I'm pretty sure in orbit that is wider than the moon. So yeah. Anyway,
Yeah, there's old boosters
more
and
you
things
know.
like that have gone out real far and come back that have gone past.
We just
the
want hardened, as much hardened infrastructure as possible. In fact, like our electrical totally vulnerable to the like solar flare EMP situation and a bunch of other terrorist stuff, and we need to upgrade it. Like we need to harden it and like secure it, and we have the technology to do that. We just need to spend the money and the time.
Yeah, in regards
and the
to
foresight.
in regards to the solar flare EMP situation, essentially the biggest concern with that is I believe what happened if that were to happen, what it would do is it would actually like basically fry anything that is like currently active at the time that the EMP happened. So it would essentially like fry the entire network if it was on during this, which is why it's like a massive like concern, because obviously I don't think anyone wants to go back to square one on the entirety of that infrastructure.
Right. Which is like, but one of the ways that you can avoid it is through fiber optic connections, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, yeah, actually, you had me at fiber. Fiber is the best internet ever, and frankly, yeah, we do need more of that. Anyways, guys, y'all, I have to go. Thank you so much, Prime.
Have a good
Have a
one.
great one. Give your primes to Prime. Sub to him. I'm out. Peace.
So someone else is sponsored.
I just want to say he copied my lighting there towards the end, and I wasn't happy about it.
Anyways, Ray, I think we've reached the end of this topic. I was just going to say before you left, but yeah, we'll be back tomorrow. We're going to have our All Black Everything panel topped off, and you're joining us, correct?
Yeah, I can be there. I'm ready. What time is it?
8 p.m. Eastern.
8 p.m. All right, yeah, I'll be there.
Yeah.
I'm ready.
Yeah. So yeah, we're gonna have that. It'll be great. I'm gonna send you off to our friend, Look at Supreme. Be kind to him. He's a good guy. But yeah, thank you all for being around. Really do appreciate it. See you tomorrow. Come back.
Thanks for hosting.
Yeah.
Thanks for
Thanks, Brian.
hosting.
Thanks, Brian.
Yeah.
Appreciate you.